Mayor and Council, thank you for setting aside the time to go over the budget again. So I'll make a couple introductory comments and then we're going to play tag team between staff trying to walk through the information we put in front of you. So I'd like to take responsibility for what's in front of you, but I'm not. So staff around me has done one. I mean, I've been at this for 20-something years, but this has been one of the better processes that I've been through the last few weeks. So they've worked hard. We've tried to listen to you a few weeks back, tried to take into account the suggestions, recommendations, directions, or other notes that you had for us. And so we've huddled up multiple times the last couple of weeks. We've vetted personnel discussions. We've vetted capital improvement. We've cash flow. You get it, what's in the packet here. So I can't say, first of all, I can't say thank you enough to staff as they've rallied to this, as they've wrestled through this. I'm fully expectant this afternoon, there'll be other comments, there'll be other input that you have, other direction that you'll have. This is an iterative process. And so we've got a couple different bites at the apple here. We're coming back on the 13th again next month for a very comprehensive discussion about departmental budgets. And then yet again, a public hearing in November, and then finally a vote in December. So as we mature through this process, we're certainly going to continue to refine these. And as we get better sales tax numbers, we're going to keep updating that and just those kinds of things as we kind of walk our way through this process. So
great. So could I
oh, please.
Do you mind if so I'd like to start out one, and this is directed to the staff, Lisa, Christine, and Wes specifically. And that is that I can't believe how well a budget was devised here, how well I think you listened to what the council has asked of you. I think it's really clear. It was really incredibly, I think you did a great job of making it concise yet detailed. I think that some of the objectives that has been mentioned have been included in here. I couldn't be more excited about the budget you guys are presenting and the professionalism and the quality of it. So thank you very much to everybody that was a part of it.
So I only have one more thing before I start to turn it over. Staff would like to spend at the conclusion of our time today before council just a few minutes looking at the October draft agenda. So on the heels of what we talk about, for the next little bit, to take a look at that proposed agenda and to see if it still makes sense, if we want to do it in that way, if those are still the topics we want to cover. So just don't let me forget as we bring this thing to a close, just to take a few minutes and peek at that and make sure it keeps us on track. And is there a way to shorten it, or do we need more time, or whatever that might look like? So the only other thing I have before I turn it over to Lisa to talk about fund balances, if we want to take overs and unders on how this whole thing's going to go today and how long it's going to last, but I don't see any head nodding for over and unders for how long we're going to be here. So, okay, so without that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa then and let her walk us through the next part. This fund available summary was a direct request that came out from the mayor and some of the council members. And so she's got that and she'll start us on that. Thanks, Lisa.
Good afternoon. If you go to section 2 of your budget workbook, this is what we're calling the funds available summary. And so we had a request to summarize 2020 only and not make any assumptions about the future years, that it would be up to council's discretion what was available at the end of 2020 and make decisions based on that. So the two columns that you have is the general fund, and it goes through the beginning fund balance, estimated revenues, operating expenses, committed capital projects. So that's anything that's already in progress or we have a commitment to do. And then it takes into account the net fund balance and then subtracts out restricted funds to come up with what's available on the general fund side for the public safety facility. That assumes that you'll be using public safety impact fees, the public building impact fees, and the remaining 2018 COP capital for the police facility. And then the TDA does the same thing, and it comes to a net what's available for future capital projects, and that amount is 8.7 million. This is just a snapshot for 2020. There are future obligations for capital beyond this year, beyond 2020, but this gives you a good picture for 2020. Any questions on what's provided there?
Awesome job, Lisa.
Thank you.
So as you can imagine, when you go into a budget and you do some tinkering, and this wasn't just a little bit of tinkering, but when you do significant tinkering, it's going to have some impact on the cash flows. Again, what we were trying to do, and I'm not going to steal Christine and Lisa's thunder, is really try to establish a baseline with certain assumptions. So we went into it trying to figure out how we could attempt, if possible, to maintain certain reserves and pay for certain capital expenditures and have a certain threshold for operations. So we did spend a lot of time going through, I think I'm going to steal the word, Mayor, is sharpening our pencils and just making sure whether calculations were as tight as we could make them given the variables that we have sitting in front of us today. So having said that, Lisa, I'll let you jump into that 5-year preliminary cash flow.
So by statute, we're only required to do the budget for 1 year, but we always project out 5 years. So it gives you a picture of future cash flows and reserves. There are some assumptions in here, and I can go through each of them. The assessed valuation, we're still using the 2019. We're waiting on the assessed valuation for property tax from Larimer County. We'll get that later this year and update that. It assumes the property tax mill levy will remain constant. There'll be no changes there. And then we project out sales tax revenue, 13% growth in 2020, 10% in 2021, and 7% thereafter. It assumes no finance borrowing, and capital project expenditures have been included, and they're based on the CIP that's in a future section. And it includes an $11.1 million placeholder for the new PD facility. It does not assume any land acquisition costs, so that is not included in there. It includes vehicle replacements for the police department and public works. Some of the projections for staff increases, we projected 1.5% salary increase for 2020 and 3% thereafter. It takes into account health and para increases. And then it assumes that the TDA 2018 loan will be completely utilized by the end of 21. In addition, we took a look at the town annual events, and we made decreases in 2020, assuming that everything will be scaled back due to COVID and that they will resume in 2021, but at a reduced level than 2019 and prior. So there were some additional decreases there. All of that said, what it results in is an unrestricted fund balance of 50% or more for each projected year except 2022. So at 2022, it dips down to 45%, taking into account all of those assumptions. So I'd be happy to answer any, go ahead.
Are we asking questions?
Yeah.
Let me ask you, you might have it in here.
Yeah, I just got those numbers this morning. So when it came in July, the year-to-date numbers we were up 17%, and through August year-to-date, we're only up 15%. So the growth is slowing. There was Walmart, I think, saw a significant decrease compared to August of last year, probably because of back to school. Yeah.
So is it 15% August to August or 15% year-to-date August to
15%.
year-to-date August?
15% year-to-date.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
No,
it
it's-
is that
There's-
percentage is
We're one of the
decreasing
few
a little bit.
communities that has that going on.
Yeah,
And was, oh, go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Christine.
And we wanted to put the wiggle room, as Lisa said. So for 2020, we're estimating a year over year of 13%. So we still have 2% that we could drop. We'll keep monitoring that, as Lisa said. That 13% may be conservative, or it actually might be too high. So we'll keep looking at that as we work through these iterations that Wesley mentioned.
And when there's some wiggle room there if these numbers come in a little above our conservative assumptions. And so, or we have to delay spending funds.
It is. And I don't know if Lisa mentioned, maybe I just missed it. One of the things the projections don't include is any sales of property. So that's something that the council will be looking at, all the town-owned properties. So imagine none of that revenue has been put in there. So conservative assumptions, there are other things that haven't been included. We think that 45% or that 5% that we're off by, that translates to about $600,000. We think we can find $600,000. If it's not deferring a capital project, it's probably more than likely going to be made up by these conservative, somewhat conservative projections.
Well, and the other issue too is we have an exec session tonight during the council meeting. There's going to be a proposal we put on the table during that, and that could have an impact. So without stealing the thunder there, that's certainly more than 600,000.
So I'll reiterate to, being on the CPA, some of this stuff's probably a little easier for me. But I think they were not highly, what's the word I want to use? It's slightly more than conservative on what they use for the revenues, which I think is great. Yeah, I don't have any in it. And that's, if you notice, it's 10% for 2021, not 13. So it's 10% drop for that. And the other thing is for my friend Rick Collins, who is wanting a big working reserve, it's not just 50%, it's 3% more than that because of the Tabor in there. So if you really look at a cash reserve, we got 53%.
Unless we have property.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of reserves, but if you wanted to just go cash.
I had a couple questions too. If you needed to finish a thought, then go ahead and finish.
Oh, yeah, so the 13%, just, and Mark's right, next year we're projecting a year-over-year increase of 10% sales tax. But this year we're saying 13%. So if we're at 15%, we still have some room if we continue to see some marginal decline, so.
Okay. You mentioned a decrease in the town event spending. Just what kind, I mean, we're cutting that in half. Are we decreasing by 10%? What kind of rough impact to that? I won't hold you to an exact dollar amount, just a rough idea.
If you ask an accountant the exact number, they
Yeah.
can't find it.
Are we getting together with a crock pot for the whole town or,
You're going to get an exact number, Brett.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So, for example, in 2019, we spent 565,000 in annual events, and for 2021, we're projecting 355,000.
Okay.
And we had an original budget of, what was the original
The
budget?
original budget was 625.
Yeah, so we're going to do about half of that. And
Okay.
even though we're budgeting for more next year, certain events, and we'll look at that in more detail on the meeting on the 13th. Certain events right now we're saying are never going to be, we're not going to go back to historical spending, if you will. We've cut down some budgets.
Okay.
So for example, last year we spent over 225,000 on July 4th. I think for next year we have it down to 180. Whether or not that's a good number, we'll look at that more on the 13th to make sure that the council is agreeable to going back to doing the annual events, but maybe saving some dollars.
We still have some cushion there though, too, don't we? I mean, that if going to your deal, and I sort of agree where you're implying, is that if we wanted to get to 500 or 550 because of adding an event or doing something to that effect, that we've got the cushion to be able to do that. I mean, one obvious one is the police station. There's no way we're going to spend all of that in 2021 unless we've got the world's fastest general contractor. So assuming 18 to 20 months, which I think is what it is for a complicated commercial building, we're going to be rolling into 2022, although we've got all of the cash being in 2021. So I think there's another cushion there that we're going to be able to work with.
Actually, the police facility is projected in 2 years. So we did split it between
you?
2021 and 2022.
That's why we come out with the 45% at 2022 is from
Yeah.
the 2 years of spending.
Yeah.
on that.
Okay, sorry
Yeah.
about that. I don't know how I missed that one.
And that's why the 2020 analysis is good, but that 5-year gives you
Right.
a kind of, you get to look what's around the corner as well. So
Yeah.
not just looking at the snapshot. So, but yeah, we have about 4 million in the CIP for 2021 and then 6.5 roughly in 2022.
Okay.
And I think, well, and then there's another one that might come about that's going to have a big effect there too. So we'll see how that goes. You had another just a sec. You had some more questions. Brad.
Just last question, and I don't intend to start a big discussion on this topic before we get there, but the 11.1 million on the police station, just roughly what's the criteria we used on that number?
That was your alternative B. So when we mapped out A, B, and C, what, 5, 6 weeks ago, something like that, we used that alternative B. That was kind of the middle ground, and that was the number that we put.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I know we'll discuss that in much more detail later. So.
The number that they were picked about was just a placeholder number. The selection or site selection deal was like 375
Okay.
a square foot. Talk 20,000 square foot, so 30,000 square foot. Multiplied out is like 11.250.
Okay.
That's a rough ballpark. The other thing to keep in mind is if it is indeed phased in some way, might not be talking about that full amount in the first 3 years. It might be a second phase would start
Right.
in a row too. So.
Okay. Thank you.
So the last thing on this that we really would like council direction on is we will be coming back at the October work session with an unrestricted fund balance policy update. Currently, the policy is a minimum of 25 and a maximum of 50. And I know we had some prior discussions about the 25 might be too low. We want to raise that minimum. And so I wanted to hear from council what your thoughts were on that revision.
Rick, why don't you take the lead, because I know you're the one that felt pretty
So
adamant
I
about it.
just heard you said,
Yes.
and when the update positive, we need to actually correct the verbiage. Just update it in general and give us the greatest flexibility. I personally would like to see there's a certain percentage of that rolls over year after year.
Here's what we would recommend, and we actually were going to change the policy and call it working reserve. To be consistent, I think Brett, your comment last time was noted. So we do need to be consistent one way or another. So calling it working reserve, I would actually recommend that we update the policy to say the town will maintain a minimum of 25% and strive to maintain 50%. That gives you flexibility and it doesn't lock you in that you have to have 50%. But I think it drives the point home that council wants to maintain 50% if at all possible. And that certainly would be a priority as you work through each annual budget. So I think that gives you that flexibility, and we'll make sure to use that language so it's not, the parameters aren't so stringent that
Christine, I'm looking
locks you in.
around. I haven't seen you nod or done anything, but everybody else I've seen sort of nods in agreement with you. And
Yeah, I think that's great as well.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't mind personally having a number slightly higher, just so that we do, especially looking at what you just presented to us. But I don't know that
which number,
we,
Lisa, just so I understand.
as far as,
50%.
I don't know that it has to be 50, but something higher than the 25.
Oh, okay. I
Is
understand
what I
you're saying.
would prefer, maybe something like 40%, or especially since you just mentioned in this 5-year, we're always, let's say, above that 40 based
So
on
I
this draft.
think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Christine, but I think what Christine was suggesting was a 25% minimum and a 50% strive for, which I think matches what you're asking, but am I mixed up?
I would prefer to raise the minimum a little bit, would be my
okay.
preference, but still say strive for 50, but
So the minimum is any reserve that goes below the minimum has special rules that apply to whatever we can withdraw.
Exactly.
You want that number to be higher stuff that we have a very high restriction on what we have to replenish and what we can use it for. You're thinking that needs to be 30, 35. Is that?
So what do you suggest, Lisa? No, I'm asking.
35, 40 per, based on the numbers laid out right in front of me, knowing that if this were to be approved as it is, we would always, at least within that 5 years, be above 40. I would say something like 35 or 40 would be what I would suggest. I just worry that if we keep it at 25, it still allows too much flexibility to bring it down a little
I
bit.
hear you. I'm just looking around to see.
So.
Because I think you're asking us what's our flavor so that you don't come back and then we
Change
knock
it
it
all.
around. So
Right.
I'm looking at everybody to see, give comments on what your flavor is. That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, I am. So that it will be pretty seamless when we get to 13, because we kind of incorporate it. I definitely hear Lisa's comments. The reason why I think leaving a minimum at 25%, once again, it just gives you flexibility, because once we put strive 50%, that's your policy. We're always going to build that in, but there may be some years if revenues are down, unanticipated, it just gives you a little bit more flexibility. But I hear your point, but once again, it's up to council what you want that minimum to. I would recommend 25, but
right.
put
Aaron?
35, 40, whatever.
I absolutely understand where you're coming from, Lisa, but I think if somebody came to town, a big box or whatever, and all of a sudden we needed, okay, let's, if Menards were to come knocking or something, you'd want to be able to have that money freed up where you could use it to capture somebody like that if possible. So I'm good with the 25%, but with the language in there that, hey, we're striving for 50%.
You okay with that, Lisa? Brett?
Yeah.
Rick?
Yeah, again, it's going to come down to how you draft this thing. Whether you use the word may or shall. And if it's an ordinance resolution, if you say they're going to strive to get this, if it said shall maintain, but it's pretty set that you're going to have to maintain the 25 at the minimum kind of deal. But if it's a may or language, it's a guidance language. It says our goal here is to keep no less than our goal. And that's like a may. Our goal is to keep no less than 25%. And I would just like to see it and ideally, we'd like to have 50% or greater. So you can go over even if you have to, but it gives you flexibility. You can always go back to the council
So can
and
you
use those funds.
You got me confused a little, Rick. So are you saying you want shall be 25% and strive
No, I would keep
for
it, our
50?
goal is 25%. So all of a sudden, if you needed a year where Aaron
Okay,
said
so you want the
big box comes
flexibility
in
on
or
the
something where we
25
need
too.
the
No,
revenue,
I
you're
get it.
not stuck going back changing that because Robert says you can't do that because you've got this here saying you can't have your reserves go below.
So you want
Or-
the
Robert's fault.
flexibility
The
at 25. Okay.
flexibility.
How about-
Flexibility.
what's
And
everyone-
the other thing to remind ourselves is, when they changed the charter the last time, they said this was going to be updated. It's in that list of about 8 things that was to be updated, this ordinance.
Ordinance or?
Or whatever it
charter?
is, whatever it is. It's in that,
Yeah.
Robert?
in that thing. It doesn't matter. We don't have to go over that. I'm
I
just saying.
know, I'm just curious. Is it a charter item that we're talking about or is it an ordinance
No,
item?
it's an ordinance.
Okay, so it doesn't matter.
No, but when they did made changes to the charter the last time, I think Phil chaired it. They had this line in there too, that the reserve thing would be updated.
Okay, but that's an ordinance.
I
That's
have
all
to
right.
go back.
That's right.
You know what,
Anyway.
I think, let us take a stab at it. I hear your comments.
It's the flexibility is the main thing.
I think we can incorporate.
Okay,
And because remember, and I know you don't have the policy in front of you, there are certain circumstances that you can tap into that minimum. And that includes things like capital, grant matching and other things. Let us take a stab at it. I think we'll get to a happy place.
I think you hear what everyone's saying,
I
so.
do.
And I do agree with getting rid of.
Yes, for sure.
In where we can't have over, I think.
Yeah, oh yeah, we don't want that.
And I think adding, striving, but whatever it is, 50% or more takes takes away that cap, but we're always, listen, if we could do 70%, 80%, we
Yeah.
will definitely do that.
And you show some
Okay.
good
let's take a
percentage.
snapshot.
One other point, I'd like the group to remember that 25% mean what it actually means and what 50% means. 50% means we have a 6-month reserve sitting there if we don't bring in 1 more cent. 25%, it's 3. So think of it in months too, because if we go to hell in a handbasket, as they say, the more months I have out there, the better it is. And it gets tougher because just even bringing the council in or doing whatever, it gets tough.
Thanks, Rick. Okay, did we give you the guidance you wanted?
Thank you.
Great. Why don't we?
We're good. And you
So-
won't be adopting the resolution on October 13th. We're bringing you the draft policy. So we'll get a chance to kind of go
Got
through
it.
that in circumstances.
Lisa, was there anything else you wanted to talk on that?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wes, do you want to take over personnel projections?
Yes, thank you. So in your packet, then on the 4th tab, we've got an outline of the request on the personnel projections. So just real quick, hitting some highlights. We wrestled internally both on the positions that we thought we needed to look at, as well as what the compensation package is. So it's, just to be honest with you, the amount set aside for potential compensation increases next year was kind of batted around. It's all over the place. I wish I had a perfect scenario for you, but you get everything from Fort Collins and Loveland saying 0 to Johnstown saying 5%. It's all over the manager's listserv. We tried to take a conservative approach. We understand that even though our sales tax dollars overall are going up, that there is also a perception and a stewardship principle that we may want to adhere to. So we're actually coming to you asking to set aside 1.5, which is about 32,000. If for some reason, as we start closing in on the end of the year, our numbers are still robust, it doesn't mean that we can't have another conversation about moving that needle up or down, depending on where the sales tax numbers go. But sitting here in front of you this afternoon, we felt like in order to try to have a good baseline place to start, 1.5 is probably just a happy medium, for lack of a better way to say that. So again, we'll have another crack in October when we bring the departmental budgets back, and we'll have yet another crack at the public hearing in November. And if the council feels otherwise, they can certainly provide us input, and we can, well, we as in, not me, but as in the very accomplished people can make the adjustments to the budget spreadsheets that will trickle through the departments and make those calculations.
At
So,
this point too, let me
Yes,
just
sir.
make a quick comment.
Uh-huh.
This is the first time Lisa's gone through this. So if you guys, like it, you might say something to Lisa. I know she had Christine's help there, but I heard Christine passed on to Wes that she really took a lot of the ball and did it. And so, I'm quite frankly, Lisa, I'm shocked, because that's a complicated deal to do, that somebody can jump in 2 months and hit the ball running that well. So good job.
So the gist of the departmental request is we ask each department center to take a look at their budget and to really talk about what impacts that they felt like, because of either where the organization was at in its growth cycle or just the issues that were potentially sitting in front of us over the next 12 to 18 months, what that would do, what they needed to accomplish that. So, there were some long conversations. Obviously, people were in and out of my office and Lisa and Christine's office, raising ideas. We've certainly vetted some things, but what we really tried to center on is, what have we already established? So for instance, in public safety, we understand that we're moving towards, although we're not going to be there next year, we're moving towards this 24/7 model. So obviously we need to begin to add some positions to that. And Chief can speak to this, but in his case, there's also issues of how many people we can bring in at one time, how many people we can screen, background check, there's an FTO program that has to happen. So there's all these things that have to happen that are other variables other than just simply adding bodies and dollars to it. So we feel like this is a good path to move us forward in parks and community development, particularly community development, given we're not seeing a slowdown. Frankly, the real issue is, if anything, there's a lot of pressure on staff to process permits and to process plats and site reviews and all the kind of development applications that go with that. We're also using, particularly in that area, the opportunity to step out and say, the town itself inside the organization is going to bring these people in-house. This is a good level to start these discussions. So for, particularly in the community development area, the planner and some of the assistants that's added there on the building side, those are actually going to be in-house positions that we're going to hire, bring in, train, and then kind of start from there. And then of course in parks, I don't need to tell you more. You guys see the emails for the reservoir and for trying to stumbling towards some sort of park and recreation department and what that looks like. There's a lot of great amenities here, but there's also a lot of great expectations to go with that. So we're trying to formulate what that looks like kind of moving forward. So the gist of it is that in the community development, we're adding 2, public works, we're adding 1, police department, we're adding 1, and in parks, we're adding 2. So that's kind of the bottom line. Staffs here, you see attached behind here, the requests that came with those and the rationale that went with that, where they're going to fit, what they're going to do, and the potential downsides if we don't take that step now. So questions of staff? Yes, sir.
So I'm going to just say to council, this page, I think, really tells you a lot real fast. And that first one's sort of hard. I think the second one's the better one.
Yes, thank you for, yeah.
And so then I'll ask these guys, though, is there any more? I mean, I think you did such a great job. I don't know. I don't want to belabor some, but I want to make sure everybody can feel totally 100% comfortable with what they're reading. So does anyone, I think at this point, I'd like to let the council ask questions.
I just have a quick question. How many of the positions that are being proposed would replace a contract? Because like code enforcement, for example, right now, I know we do code enforcement. Will that be in addition to the current contracted employees that we have, or will it replace, or will it be in addition to?
It'll replace, and I'll let Matt
We're looking at actually bringing, since the number of days that we need the code enforcement official officer is increasing, we're kind of at that 2-day a week, but it's just on the bubble of being not quite enough. So we were talking about bringing that actually as an on-staff full-time employee that we would then cross-train in some other ways so they can actually help assist the building department, because those two things are a lot of ways intrinsically connected. So it may be to start that might be more hours a full-time person would need, but we could backfill it with other responsibilities. So it would be an on-staff person to answer your question.
Okay. Great. And then same with so the Parks and Rec. I know it says reservoir staff seasonal, but it's 1 FTE. Would that be, and I read a little bit about some other stuff that they could do as well. Would that be a year-round 1 FTE, or would it be a 1 FTE only during a seasonal time?
Right. This is a great debate that Lisa and I were having, because it's kind of one of those twists. You know, a half of an FTE is a seasonal category, and that's just half of the year. And then you tag, so they're not quite that one. So 1 is actually equals to 2 FTE in the seasonal sense. So
Okay.
they would be on staff in this, but they wouldn't be year round. They'd be just this.
Okay.
But I am talking about having 1 person so a quarter FTE going year round, so that they can kind of do some of those off season type things to get ready for the next season. So that it's kind of a funny math when you look at all the different halves and quarters and everything put together.
Right. 1
But
FTE does not necessarily
yeah.
mean 1 person.
Right. So we put it all together, and we've got about a half dozen people or so, you know, when you to make up this kind of conglomeration. But it makes it work for the year round aspect, because we do want some of that shoulder season and off season work to carry over and be picked up.
Okay.
So we're covering that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rick.
And I think you mentioned this, Wes. I just had a question here. Is 1.5% equals how much in total dollars?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
The 1.5% increase.
32,000.
Is it 32,000?
Okay, that's what I thought.
Approximately.
That's all I got.
And in our projections for our 5-year budget, they're assuming this chart. Is that
Yes.
correct? Great, thanks.
And and I had a chance to ask Lisa this, and the question was, we're not committing ourselves to anything. This, being the new guy, I had asked this, and I don't know if Brett knew this already or not, but we're not committing ourselves to anything other than 21. The 22 stuff here are suggestions,
Yeah.
insight. Okay.
Yeah, all that's just projections and.
I know, everybody but me knew that.
But it's all, but all of this money is accounted for in our 5-year budget.
Correct, yes.
Brett, did you have any questions?
On the code enforcement officer, do we expect that to be cheaper than the Safe Built contract, or is that, how's that look?
So yes and no. So
Okay.
we will be very similar, but we're going to get more time. So
Okay.
that's kind of the benefit there is, and I have I think the salary, and I have to check with Lisa what the salary range is, but it would be very close to what we're paying on the contract
Okay.
standpoint.
So right now, I think for the 2 days, they bill $50,000 annually.
Okay.
You'll get a full-time person with the benefits.
Okay.
So the value is better.
Right.
in that sense.
And we would have expected Safe Built to be to 3 days or something.
Right.
Am
That
I
would-
right?
That would be yeah, we would add on another day to Safe Built's contract, and then we'd be pushing right up against that
Okay.
exact same number. But now we're getting actually 5 days versus 3 days for basically the same price.
And in my understanding, this is just one position of Safe Built, not the full contract of Safe
Correct.
Built on looking at that stuff. And you knew that, right, Brett?
Right, yeah, not all the inspections and all
Correct.
that stuff.
Yeah, it's just that one position.
Wes, the 1.5% raise, is that across the board or is that an average?
So we set aside a pool of money and that in effect becomes the pool that we use. But we typically on average allocate about 1.5. Some people can be slightly higher than that. Some could be slightly.
Okay. And then last question I had on this 2021 Parks Recreation Program Coordinator, is there actually planned for some level of recreational programming, or is this more overseeing of recreational facilities that we have?
Yeah, I'll take that. It was more so overseeing the current leases that we have, like with Storm or Colorado Youth Rapids, but it's in maybe some small programming kind of things. But
Okay.
right now we don't have a recreational aspect plan.
Okay.
That's
Because we haven't budgeted any recreational programming at this point.
correct at this point. But in going forward, as recreational opportunities present themselves, this role would take on
This position
those
would
functions. Yeah.
look at some of that, okay.
That's how we're anticipating that.
Okay.
Mayor, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
So back to when they were asking about salaries and the raises and things like that. Do you typically is it a cost of living increase that's given at the beginning of the year? Do staff also get merit increases during the year? And part of why I ask is because I a lot of times when in my experience with working with government, it's based on kind of the revenue that you've had. And knowing that ours has not gone down, I just wonder if people are still being able to get merit increases, cost of living, all of that combined.
So I'm obviously new to your, how you've done it here in the past. The 1.5 is the totality of what they will get. So there will be merit conversations. It's a part of those conversations,
that.
which are basically driven around performance, but we're not remiss to understand that there's also inflationary pressures that go with that. So how's that for a nondescript answer? That's so what
So
happens?
not every employee, let's say January 1st, gets 1.5 increase to their salary.
This is effective 1/1. So even if we wind up doing the performance evaluation in February, because for some reason we're there, whatever they get is retroactive to 1/1. So whether it's the COLA or the merit piece, it's in essence effective on 1/1. So our goal is to do a better, as supervisors, we really want to have those conversations in December and not in February and March. And so people clearly understand going into the year where they're going to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me piggyback on that, because I think the police are probably a little different. I assume with the police that, and maybe I assume wrong, that they know that if they make it through the first couple of years, what their career path is as far as steps and ladders, or is it just?
I can handle that. We don't yet have a step program here. So one of the conversations we are going to have in future years is whether or not we implement what's called a step program here, which is
That's
actually
really
very
important.
common.
I implemented one at the legislature in Arizona. It's still in effect. So a research analyst will know within 24 months if they're asked to continue where they're going to go to. And it's a steps. It's like the federal government and state. And I would think recruiting wise, that'd be pretty important too.
And as we move towards a 24/7, we're going to have that conversation in future years about what that looks like, what the council's philosophy is on that, what the burden rate's going to be, both in current years and in future years. So we're certainly going to have to tackle that in the not too distant future. Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Is that, okay, all right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Wes, good job.
Well, I have an internal bet, so I'm doing my best to make that, sir.
5-year capital improvement plan. Who do you want to? I think that's your group, Don.
Yeah, so take it away. So obviously we tried to listen to what you told us last time. And particularly Matt or Brian, where's Brian at? Brian's around here, and Eric and Don have worked really hard with Lisa and Christine to look at this 5-year CIP. We really did go back and look and say, hey, it's always a bit of a struggle between what you look in the crystal ball, between what you believe is going to happen, what you want to plan for contingency with what may happen, and what you really, I think, as Mr. Collins says, need versus want. So we also try to struggle through that a bit too. So Don and Brian, take it away.
Okay, well, when Brian gets here and Eric's in the middle of this thing also. And so what we really want to do is make this as informative as we can get it. So we'll start, and then we can make it formal or we can make it very informal. I'd like to make it very informal. You can stop us anytime.
I think leave it informal. If you could, here's what I think works best with everybody here, and as I watch, it seems that way, is don't tell us what we already know. So do an informal and then let us ask what we don't know, and maybe anticipate what we don't know we don't know.
You got it. Okay, we will try for that to start here. And so there's actually, you want to talk about this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, true. Okay. Matt's going to be handing this out, but this is a change based on a conversation we had with the mayor and several of us yesterday regarding, you asked us to rank. Now, I'll spend just 2 minutes.
Wait, when you say we, it's the council asked you to rank.
Yes, okay. That's correct. Excuse me. The council asked us to rank all the projects. And I want to just explain that's a reasonably difficult project to do, because we're ranking infrastructure versus parks versus many other things. And so there's a lot of subjectivity that goes into ranking these things. And Brian and Matt and Eric to some degree need more of the credit than me. I did fill the stuff out. I did participate in it. So you had 2 engineers and you had 2 planners that used this system that we created to rank all the different projects. So at the end of the day, what you see in this colored 8.5 by 11 is a ranking from 1 to 35 of all of the projects that are in the CIP.
So I had the opportunity to see this before to get ready for the meeting and stuff. And so the only thing this second page is to help you out, is I asked them to put the year that shows up. So if we say this is a priority like Poudre River Trail contribution, when are we making that in the section? And if it turned out that we are putting 2025 as the first one and 2021 down below when we fund it, we aren't staying consistent with what they think the priorities are. And so this was to help us make sure that we're expressing ourselves as to what priorities should be and stuff. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
that's good. And you can see on the top, the average scores, and each of us scored separately, but you have commitment, health, safety, and welfare. And so commitment is just what it means, what it says. It means that we're committed. We've signed a contract, we have a commitment in some way that we have to do it. So it gets 10 points right to start. And that really weighs these things significantly. And then you go to the health, safety, and welfare. The health is 2, safety is 3, and welfare is 1. And so that's the weighting of these things as we went through the ranking. Okay, so
There's a pretty detailed description process that there's a pretty detailed description of the process we went through in the narrative. So I think we're happy to answer any questions about that. One thing I did want to point out is in the narrative, it does talk about the subjectivity of this. And I think that it's just as important for us to discuss the way we approach these projects and evaluate them as we do talk about the individual projects. So when we were tasked with this, we kind of came up with this matrix to evaluate them kind of on different values. And we didn't evaluate them against each other. We evaluated each one independently and then ranked them with those scores. So I think, and then we did go back and talk about our scores, and then a couple of us revised our scores based on the discussions. You know, I learned some things talking to the engineers learned some things talking to the planners. So we did kind of come to our own page, but you can see by the scoring that aside from commitment, there's not really a whole lot of round numbers there. So there still was a divergence of opinions on health and safety and welfare and the visibility to the public. So I just wanted to open it up and see if there was any discussion, if you guys thought there was a factor that we should be weighing that we didn't, or one of the factors that we chose is too heavily weighted or not heavily weighted enough.
Brian, next time you deliver this, can you include a pair of cheater glasses?
Yes.
You can read these.
I was
Thank
literally
you, Eric.
upstairs. I printed them
I'm
first,
with
and I was
you on
literally
that
like
one.
cropping the PDF and seeing if I could get it to print bigger. And it started like the column started bleeding off the screen. So
Aaron's got his
Fortunately,
own
I got my
micro. I was gonna say,
magnifying
he's got his
glass
own
here.
magnifying glass up here.
if it makes you feel any better, I can't see it either.
That's good.
I could drop it. I could put it up on the
That
big.
does make me feel better.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the only new information on this one is the year where we're spending the dollars. So if you're just looking at the rankings, and when I was putting the years in, they do pretty much align with our higher priorities or the earlier projects. You can see that, you know, the bottom, ranked 27 through 35. The majority of those are future projects, except for the 4th Street pedestrian improvements, which is kind of an ancillary design, small design project that goes along with the Parkway. So, I feel like we ended up we came about this in a different way than we have prioritized before, but we ended up kind of in the same place with some minor deviations.
yeah, and if you focus on some of the numbers, you'll see that the differences between the rankings can get pretty small. Okay, so some fluctuation in places would change it, and so it's quite subjective. But we're all professionals, so we think it's perfect.
Of course.
I have no illusions that it's perfect.
I never did a spreadsheet in my life that I didn't think was perfect.
Okay, so happy to go into that in whatever detail you want. Each one of these then references back to, you can find it on the CIP. So they all are kind of interlinked.
Yeah, and just one quick note on that. The CIP, we did previously have project numbers against there. We did change them to letters now in that first column, so that they wouldn't be too confusing with the ranking sheet on the rankings.
So let me just ask a question to you guys. So they identified all the projects there. I only looked at 2021 with a glance at 2022, just so I felt good about it. You guys had different ways of looking at it, I know. What would you like to do at this point? Do you want them to go through project by project, or what I think my preference is identify a project that says, I don't know what that is or where it is or why we're spending that much money or that. That's what I prefer seeing us do, but I'm asking you guys what you would like.
I don't think we need to do project by project. We kind of did that last time around.
Back in July.
Yeah. At one point, I would like to at least just ask the question, and maybe now's good.
Ask questions.
But-
Is everybody good with, let's just ask questions and sort of hit, okay, so go ahead, Brett. Why don't you start
So
this
the
out?
difference between, so look, if I were to compare the previous plan from July to this one, are there any projects that had significant changes to when their completion dates or costs, or if we, I'm just trying to connect the dots between our
No,
budget
Good question.
Okay,
that we were at, so.
yeah, I do. But I think there's, and you guys jump in here, but I think between then and now, we have Weitzel,
Right.
which was not there. I think that's the biggest change in terms of numbers. I think you know what that is, but
Yep.
we'll explain it in more detail coming up. Yeah, I should do that.
Okay.
I think the rest of it is very similar. We
Okay.
tweak some of the numbers and move things around. You may see a little change, but for the most part, it's very similar.
Okay. I mean, I know we dropped some items off the plan, which was fine, like the vehicles and things like that.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm just, so if I were to look at, Latham Parkway, Welling to Highway 14, there's not really a change in the timeline on that, or it's all pretty similar in terms of, we didn't defer any projects in order to pay for the police station. Is
That's
the root
correct.
question? Okay.
The major change that we had as far as years and dollar amounts are the projects that are now listed in that future wish list column that
Mhm.
were all identified in the July.
Okay.
So like some of those were in the 22, 23, 24 years, and they all are now accounted for in that far right column.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
And then do you want to talk about Parkway Improvements? That was, Parkway Improvements was also a dollar amount that you guys pushed out.
We moved from 2021 to 2022. Yeah,
Yeah.
just based on the current climate of the, and so that was actually two factors. One factor was we got the kind of, direction that we really shouldn't start working on that project until the railroad crossing was approved. So where we had that split in a 2021, 2022, it's now all in 2022.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think if you looked at the prior CIP, Brett, you'd see 2.8 in 2021, the rest of it, now it's all been pushed out. So all of the changes that were discussed at the July have been made.
Okay.
Don, you, in the pre-meeting that we had, you identified, and we had sort of a discussion on the railroad and how it's going to affect that Parkway Improvements. That was news to me. I think it'd be good for you to maybe comment on the likelihood of 2022 versus 2032 or.
Sure, and I'll let Erica, I'll tee it up, and then Eric, if you have additional comments on it, excuse me, jump in. What we were talking about is that there are examples of, let's just say, railroad crossing projects in northern Colorado and Colorado in general that have been extended and exacerbated because the railroads are so difficult to deal with. In this particular situation, I'm not saying we're not going to have, we will continue to have difficulty in dealing with the railroad. However, in this particular situation, we've got a couple of compelling things going on. Number one, we can't expand County Road 5 through Old Town and meet the needs of County Road 5 Main Street in the future. So the Parkway is a necessity. That means that we have to have a railroad crossing. It also could very well mean that we give up the railroad crossing on Main Street. Having the goals that we talked about before, our vision is we want to keep both of them. Do we think that that's going to happen? I don't know. I'm sure not going to bet the farm on it. But what I was trying to tell Mark is I think this isn't going to last. I'm going to predict it's not lasting 10, 20 years to get this crossing, because we will go to the PUC and complain if we cannot get this crossing.
And I never heard how long that would take, but I mean, let's just say a regular deal that the railroad says, no way. So then we decide to protest to the PUC. And let's say the PUC will agree with us.
Yeah, let me do another thing just real
All right,
quick.
do that.
Why don't you explain the other crossing, not Three Bell, but the other one that we did, the new one, 3 or 4 years ago, Summerfield.
Summerfields.
Explain exactly how long that one took.
Well, we weren't involved with the start of Summerfields. I believe the town got approval 2008, 9, and took it to the PUC because of a battle over the costs. But then with just development and the recession, it didn't get built until when we built that 2012. And that one was a new crossing in exchange for closing the previous crossing.
Exactly.
That's all I'm really asking is,
Yep.
so your estimate is that could happen in 2022, could happen in 2026.
Correct.
Okay.
City of Fort Collins attempted to get a new railroad crossing of the same railroad.
Yeah.
It took them about 3 years, and going to the court. We are using the same attorney that they used. They learned things from that process. That's why we got him involved now.
Yeah.
And we've been following kind of his guidelines of splitting 3 Bell and that one apart. So we didn't get thinking 3 Bell was only going to take a year and not 3 years. And as soon as the signals go up, we're geared up to start working on the Parkway. So we don't mess 3 Bell
I think
up.
that's great. I mean, I didn't know what hours were, and I don't know if the council did either. So,
And
Brett, do you have any other questions? How about you, Aaron?
No, I'm good. I mean,
Okay. Rick?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say, it's a good tool, and that's great, because I don't think there's a right answer to this test.
Right.
But at least now we have something we can throw up on the wall and say,
Yep.
here's what we're working for. And the trick will be is we find out some of these projects might be delayed for 2 or 3 years, maybe to pull other projects that are further down the list up. And I mentioned one of the down in Wild Wing Park, for instance. So I don't think we do anything on it for quite a while. Maybe if we're not able to move at all on some of this stuff, we can move it up. Who knows? But at least it's a good tool. Thank you, guys.
Very good. And I'm glad you put those years in. Thank you.
Lisa?
I just have a question about and part of it is just because it's in the budget for next year, is the Whitesell Street extension to County Road 5. And whether that is, I guess, and I see where it's ranked, but how necessary is it to add that in? I know we talked a little bit at the last council meeting about it and got numbers for how many people are on the frontage road and all of that. I'm just wondering how necessary it is, especially if hopefully CDOT helps with the crossing over I-25, that piece of it, whether that's something that's necessary or not.
Okay, I'll dive into this, and Eric, you jump in. Yeah, I won't get into all of it.
Are we having another meeting on this one?
We will.
Okay.
But to answer your question.
Yeah,
I'll
some of
just
it won't
answer
be
her.
covered in that.
Yeah.
So make sure you ask her.
I'll just answer your
Answer.
question directly. You know, assuming CDOT closes the frontage road as they have told us they're going to,
Mhm.
if we don't do this, any of the problems we've experienced at Whitesell and Harmony are going to be significantly more.
Okay,
even with CDOT doing the work on the overpass,
Yes.
Okay.
is what we believe.
that's what I was wondering.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we are, I mean, we have it on the CAP so we can get something in place
Yeah.
should we need to do it. We are continuing to evaluate it. We had a meeting with PFA last week and they are opposed to the frontage road being closed until a secondary access is in place.
Oh, that's good.
And so they are preparing a letter for us to send to CDOT. So this at this moment can go any direction. We just wanted something in place in case we need to make.
You're still
Next time.
pushing CDOT to help
gosh,
out
yes.
with this, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we'll continue to.
I'm just asking.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons for the meeting and the letter that we requested.
Great.
And it does
Is-
impact probably the biggest choke point of traffic in town, just right there. Harmony, Whitesell, Walmart, Costco, just the tie
Well, what-
25.
And it'll back up to County Road 5 too, and
Right.
to 5 in there, because that whole area will just
Right.
experience some gridlock time to time.
Sure.
Well, what I like to look at is that I think it was 4 million or something.
It's a
Would
lot.
that be better allocated to put towards the project for County Road 5?
Right.
Because we know we're going to possibly want to do that eventually. So once that piece is done, would we rather put money towards that instead of creating a new road, was kind of where I was thinking on
Yeah.
that one.
No,
So I'll take a stab at that. And again, not to steal our thunder from the exec session, but we may very well have that opportunity. So how's that?
'Cause I know County Road 5 is much higher dollar value, but rather than putting the 4 million and that, can we somehow?
It is a much higher dollar value. There's a complicating factor on the County Road 5, and that it
Right.
crosses a
bridge.
floodplain and floodway,
Mhm.
which involves federal approval.
I remember
i.e.
it being closed
longer
for a
time.
while back in the flood,
Yeah.
so.
So there's, we're trying to balance need, what's the impact going to be? What's the timing need to be? And just getting pieces in place that we can move around
Perfect.
as we
Thank
need.
you.
So Wes, can I pop up a couple things? Because I think we've gone through the 5 tabs here. So first off, here's the question to the council, and that is, what would you like to see at the October 13th meeting? I see no reason to duplicate. Here's one that I would like as an accountant, so me being anal, is I would like to see a general ledger listing of where 2020 will approximately be. By then we'll have August in there. And so granted, there'll be some guesses, but that we have what 2020 will be and what the budget will be on 2020 per general ledger account. So it'll break out things like you asked, Brett, where, okay, what are the community projects? That'll be a line item that'll be right there and stuff. So that we'll be able to see that, and it's more granular than this, which is something I'd like to, at least, I don't want to drill on each one of them, but take a look at anything if somebody sees something granularly that they don't. Is there anything else that you would like staff to, Lisa, Christine, everybody, is there some other analysis that anybody here feels they'd like to see come back to them? Okay, looks like, I think that's it, is that, and I think that'll give us a really good handle on taking both a big view and a granular way of taking a look at it. Is that okay, Christine and Lisa?
Yeah, we had that.
Great. So I'm going to take a flying guess at this, and everyone can go, but I don't think that meeting will take starting at noon. My guess is, it depends what you guys want to do. We could start at 3. My guess is it's only going to take an hour, hour and a half to go through that, and then take a break. Or would you rather go at 4 and then just roll into the meeting? I'm asking.
I'm good with 4 and rolling into the meeting.
I would agree on that.
Okay. So is that good, Wes?
Yeah, no, we'll rearrange his schedule. And I think, given how the discussion's going this evening, we can certainly make that work. And again, we have the November meeting. If for some reason something popped up that we could try to tackle, but hopefully we want to get as much vetted at the October 30th, because by the time we have a statutory deadline to provide a draft budget to the public by the 15th.
Yeah.
We just,
Of October.
yes, sir. And so, I mean, not that we can't make tweaks, but we want to have that as close as we possibly can, given where we're at in October. So I think that's achievable.
So Wes, I see, let me just go through this and then council look and see if you agree with what I'm saying. 12:10 to 1 strike. 1 to 3:30 sort of strike, because it'll be in that total thing. So if we go 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, or maybe 5:15, to talk about the granular budget to actual discussion, and then Lisa and Christine talk about the unrestricted fund balance policy. Is that when we said we'd do that? Is that?
Yeah, and that's literally.
That, yeah. So that's a 10 minutes. So that takes us to 5:30. TDA budget summary.
Yeah,
Should we
so
do that?
In addition to the
Today.
detail of the
Huh?
town revenues and expenditures, you'll also see the TDA budget, because that's a separate budget altogether, but that should take all
I
of
don't think
5
they're
minutes.
ready. Okay, so.
So it's gonna be quick.
So you know what? I'm going to move up our time from 4 to 3:30, I think, because I didn't think through. And then we've got a police facility update. I thought I saw that on a,
It's for today too.
pardon?
It's on today too.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's the thought?
Okay. Well, today what we're going to do is talk about sites.
Okay.
We had a great meeting on Thursday of last week with our liaisons and our entire design team and the construction team. And so we have some information. I got a little bit more information than what we even had on Thursday to go over with everybody. And I think we can do that as part of this work session as opposed to tagging it on to the end of the council meeting. We advertise it in both places so we could do it wherever it fit the best. So we can do that today. I don't actually think that we might have a short update, depending on how our discussion goes today. We may have a update for you on the 13th, but it's possible we'll still be moving forward with the information that we get today.
So I'm gonna defer to you two.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have a full day meeting.
Right.
It might be short, after the 21st meeting, might have to be better.
I agree.
Okay.
I think if anything, it's probably a 10 or 15-minute update on the 13th.
On the 13th. Okay.
It's very
And,
short.
and then I see town-owned properties, and that probably is gonna be a 30, so I'm gonna move our time up to 3. Well, so let help everybody, I'm gonna say what I'm thinking, and then you guys correct it. So I'm thinking from 3 to 4:15, we go through the granular budget, okay? Then from 4:15, then we're going to take a break. So then let's just say 4:30 to give us a cushion. So then from 4:30 to 4:45, TDA budget. So I heard you guys talking back and forth. Do we need a discussion at that time on the police? And if we want it, just 10 minutes? Okay. So that would take us 5 o'clock to 5:10. And then, okay, good. And then 5:10 to 5:50 if we need it. And if we don't need that much on the town-owned properties, we won't. Because I don't even know what we own also. Part of that's going to be a real education to me.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll make those changes. So that helps
3
us.
o'clock.
So 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, okay.
Is that okay
That's
with
perfect.
everybody?
Just so I have it
Is
down.
that, did I give timing okay and stuff? Okay,
I think that's gonna be plenty.
If staff's good with it, then I'm.
okay. Well, and if it is, I'd rather I don't want to make anyone feel pressured that we try to jam something through and stuff. Here's the other thing that I'd like to talk about while we're talking budget and stuff. So we have a public meeting. Who is town? When, Wes?
So at your November meeting, you will have a public hearing.
Oh, I'm
that's
sorry, not that
required.
one. The one where it's actually a public seminars, public whatever.
Right. So on the same evening that you have your public hearing, we're also going to have a public workshop or a public, what do we call it, Brett?
Open house.
Workshop. Thank you. Thank you, Brett. So we came up with workshop light. So we're having a workshop light on the same night in November. So from 5 to 6, we're having a workshop light. And then we are statutorily required to have a public hearing as well. So we will have that as well.
Will we be voting on the budget that night?
That comes in December.
Perfect.
But we're
Okay. I
taking
just
our-
didn't want anyone to think we were jamming it through without listening.
No,
to
and
it.
that's the whole purpose. We want that to happen then. So if there's comments or direction, or if the council changes their mind, or if there's some data point that comes up, staff's not trying to change the thing in 48 hours. So
And I know you said the staff runs that, right?
the work session.
Work session light.
Correct. Staff will give a presentation, and then we'll invite the public to ask questions, and there's an opportunity, more of an opportunity for dialogue. The public hearing is mostly just comments that can be made towards the budget.
So question, being the newbie here, does the council show up at that? Are they not?
You know, Rick has attended the last 2 years that we've had this, so you're welcome to come, certainly.
I think it'd probably be good at least 2 of us show up. I don't think we all have to. And I'm happy to be one of them. And we could all show up, but I
So
don't,
here's my thoughts.
I
We
want to
will-
let people off the hook too, if, you know, everyone's spending so much
We'll
time.
publish it for an open meetings, so as if all the council can attend, so there's not a restriction then about quorum or sunshine law. So we will publish it as
Great.
if the council's here, and then it's your discretion on whether you want to be here, listen, be involved, whatever that looks like.
Let's compare notes, make sure 2 of us are. That's all I'm saying.
I've typically gone to those in the past.
Okay, great. So,
Yeah, there you're talking about a hand. Staff there for an hour or two for people to walk in. And the same thing, hopefully, with the police side. If we've got an update board on the police at that time. That gives people a window, because I think people tend to show up better here in this town if there's a window to walk in and out.
well, but I'd also,
houses.
I didn't like your 2-hour there. I'd say it starts here, it ends here, so somebody doesn't think they can stroll in 10 minutes before 2 hours later and everyone has to stick around if there's only a couple people showing up.
So the intent of what we were going to do with the citizens is actually do the presentation. Frankly, this gives staff a dry run too. The presentation that you're going to hear at your public hearing, we're going to have a light version, no pun intended here, that we're actually going to unveil for that just that public workshop light. So we're actually going to go through the same iteration, but it's more dialogue centered at that point. But that'll probably take, Christine, correct me, 10, 15 minutes at the beginning. We'll probably walk through that, and then we'll open the floor up for questions and comments. And
I just want to make sure we give public opportunity to ask questions and stuff and that we can deal with them before we vote. That's the only thing I really wanted to make sure of. And that there's plenty.
Put it on the website.
So Kim, I think that's a good suggestion. Kim, would you mind making sure that, is that okay for me to ask Kim? Okay. Okay. Well, guys, you have time to spend with your family and lady.
Did we want to do the police building
I recommend
site
it.
discussion?
I was going to
'Cause
say,
it's
so
on
if it's the
here.
council's prerogative, we
Oh,
can
you're
actually.
ready now?
Well, so what it does is instead of prolonging the council meeting tonight.
No.
If you're,
Okay.
if you're okay.
Great.
Can we
It
take a
said
few
it
minutes
on the
break?
Oh, it's
agenda,
great,
so-
Lisa. Thank you.
Can we take a 5-minute break though?
Yeah, let's
Is
take
that
it.
okay?
Well, let's do more than 5. So let's take, because the site thing is going to take. Is that right?
22 minutes.
All right.
I think
So
between
let's,
20 and
there's
30
food.
minutes.
let's take a 10 to 12 minute break. And we'll plan on trying to be out of here at 5. So if you want to go for an hour, does that sound good?
And there's food in the,
And there's food here, so you can eat now too, I guess.
Okay.
Good job, everybody.
Oh, I just needed to get out.
Yeah, no, thanks, Lisa. Okay, we're going to start the special session on the Timnit Police Department. But before we do, I want to compliment everybody on the council. I know you all spent a great deal of time going through the budget and for the amount of understanding, obviously, that y'all had with your questions. And that's how come we were able also to get through it quickly, is because you guys spent a lot of time, I know, doing homework and being ready. So I want to commend you in front of the town on the great amount of work that you did before this to get there. It's very, very impressive. Okay, at that, Brian, take it away.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank our 2 council liaisons, Rick Collins and Aaron Pearson. We spent a little more than 4 hours together on Thursday last week in an exhaustive exercise. We're going to give you guys the very, very abridged version of that.
So is he trying to say that it's exhaustive to be with you, Aaron?
And mainly what we did was a workshop called Conditions of Satisfaction, and I won't go into the details of what that was, but there was members of the general contractors team, our design team, Terry and Sergeant Wincoop were there, our liaisons were there. So we had really everybody from every side of the project getting together and talking about what was important to them to make it a successful project. We put all those ideas up on a board. We're working on getting all of them prioritized and then back out to the group for review. So I just want to say that it was a very productive work session. I think we got a lot accomplished, and I think I definitely have a better understanding, even from our internal team, about where everybody is on concerns and priorities. So, and I think that, Aaron and Rick gave great feedback in that as well to kind of represent the council and the governing body in that too. So we won't go through all those details. That was probably 2.5 hours of the four hours. So what we are going to talk about tonight is just kind of our police station site update. We did, after our last discussion, we narrowed it down to 3 sites. We had 6 different plans on those 3 sites, 3 on the fuel property, 2 on the Artisan District, and 1 on the Mill Brothers property. Through the course of our discussions in the workshop, we got it down to 2 sites. So I'm going to just kind of show you what the other sites look like, and we're going to talk mainly about those 2 sites. Here's our map from the last time showing where we started from, and those 3 red ones are what we ended up with. This is the Mill Brothers site. This was not one of the 2 sites we selected. And so here's the detail of how that would work. We have met with the Mill Brothers group, and they seemed generally amenable to it. But our concern that we came out of the work session with is that there's a lot of unknowns with this that we don't control because we don't have the property, and trying to work out a deal that was going to work would probably delay the project to a point where none of us were comfortable moving forward on that site. So while it does have a lot of pros, the timing of it really was the largest challenge I think that we came into. And really, Aaron and Rick, if you guys have other things that you want to add from our discussions, please feel free to jump in. And
I would just like to say one thing real quick about that Mill Brothers site, because initially I thought that would be a great site. But just seeing some of those acquiring that land, and then also asking both the chief and the sergeant what they felt, they both felt that that was their lowest choice on the list. So I think it made sense to let it go.
Thank you. Here's the 3 layouts that we evaluated on the fuel property. The one that we did select to move forward is site number 1. Site number 2 and number 3 both had a lot of challenges. They had additional offsite infrastructure that would need to be built in order to make any one of those viable. Also, 2 is directly backs up to the railroad tracks, and that through our discussions internally, especially with Sergeant Wincoop, it's a strong challenge for them. The building in 2 was only about 80 feet away from the railroad tracks. So as we learned when we were building the park, derailments are infrequent. However, they come kind of at the worst possible time. So and if we had a serious derailment, we would probably have our emergency operations center at the police station, and we wouldn't want to have a police station that was affected by that derailment. So that was that threw 2 out. 3 was also relatively close to the railroad tracks. It had some other challenges, and it kind of set more as an island out there in the middle, and it really kind of limited what the rest of that parcel would be able to do. So we kind of ruled that out. So the one that we preferred is actually this one, scheme 1. So this is directly adjacent to the backyard bird. You might remember that we did talk about this scheme when we were starting to move away from the first site. And then this kind of discussion about this scheme kind of put us into the broad reaches discussion about what a site should look like and how what the rankings are and all those things. It's kind of funny that we're coming right back to one of the places that we started with, but I do feel like we have thoroughly vetted all of those other opportunities. And this one really is the one that we would recommend. So obviously that's owned by the town. There's the majority of the infrastructure around it is built. There is some offsite sewer that we would need to bring to the property. So it's about 700 feet, but not too surmountable. It's right through our green space, and there's actually some benefits to that as well. All of the sites we have established are large enough for a final building and for the phase construction.
Brian, so I don't see how many acres it is, just.
Sorry.
Is it on there? Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thanks.
in my-
Nope, that's great. Thanks.
So it's a 4.2 acre site. We can fit a building of up to about 33,000. I think there's probably more we could squeeze out of there in the future. We evaluated everything on a 30,000 square foot building, which is kind of our initial build out programming. So we wanted to make sure that that would fit. We've got about 30 public parking spaces, 50 on the secure parking side, at 415 feet to the railroad. So you can see that that was really one of the criteria that we were using as we walked through these evaluations. So the cons on this is that it may not be the highest and best land use, as it does have that Harmony frontage. And we did talk about that quite a bit in the work session about, the benefits of having the site with that visibility and that access, but also is it really the highest and best land use there? We would have to make some ongoing probably payments into the Metro District, but that's kind of, we need to discuss that. I need to discuss that with Robert kind of in more depth because there's some interesting language in that agreement. And then that temporary access road would probably need some improvement at the minimum, curb and gutter and sidewalks. It might need some oversizing depending on what the rest of that development looks like. So we've kind of talked through that quite a bit since our work session. We met with Francis and Pittman again and kind of went through all these things. I had Eric Furman involved because he's familiar with kind of where the adjacent utilities are. We brought up all the development plans. So I think we've vetted this pretty well throughout that kind of additional processing. Any questions on this site or any of the fuel sites? Moving on to the Artisan District, we did evaluate two different places in the Artisan District. One, again, on the south side, all the way up against the railroad tracks, and then two, kind of against Kern Street there. We did have a third one that we were evaluating, which was against the Parkway. That one got thrown out really quickly because there's a high pressure gas line that runs right through there. So not only did it limit where the building could be and what the site layout would be because of the size and shape of our building, we also thought it was probably not a great thing to build a police station on top of or adjacent to a high pressure gas line. I've heard interesting things about that gas line. They send all kinds of stuff through it. It's transcontinental. One day it's diesel fuel, the other day, then they send a cleaning slug down, they send another material down through there. So you never really know what's in there. So we just try to give it a little bit of a buffer. So site 2 is the one that we actually felt was the most promising. Again, mainly site 1, it looked and fit pretty well. It was a little more acreage than what we needed, but again, the proximity to the railroad tracks was really the driving concern there. So this is site number 2 at the Artisan District. It's 4.4 acres, handles a 30,000 square foot building. We have 36 public parking, 55 secure parking, and it's about 500 feet away from the railroad to the building. So we get that nice buffer for any kind of physical derailment. Again, this one is owned by the town. This site has a little bit, this is going to be a great site in a couple years when the Parkway is built and Landings is building out. I think we've all discussed operationally what would happen until then, and everybody's comfortable with what it would be, even if the railroad crossing took a little bit longer and the Parkway was a little further down the line. I think everybody understands what those operating procedures would be, and everybody's still comfortable with that. So, but really, once the Parkway's in, having that direct access to the Parkway, you're going to be able to go south pretty quickly. You're going to get up to 4th Avenue to go north. This one is a little closer to the future high school, which we think might be somewhere we should be thinking about positioning ourselves for the future. And the other thing is that this is not on Harmony Road, and some work here might spur some development in this area, maybe either redevelopment in Old Town or some other development in what we're calling the Artisan District. So there's some positives there to getting it going. Again, we vetted this on Friday with our engineering team and found really very little challenges. We're going to get sewer to work. We're going to get water to work. All the other utilities are adjacent to the site or very close by. This site is a little more unknown. I would say that so if I'm comparing the two of them, and really from a staff's perspective, these are equal. You know, when I have a preference on one, Terry has a slight preference on the other. We're both happy with either one of them. We did vet those costs that we talked about in our workshop, hoping to find that one of these would have enough costs to sway us one way or the other. The costs were within 5%. So we're not even at a conceptual level of design. So for the cost to be within 5% for the two of these, it's basically they're equal at this point. The one thing about fuel that makes it a tiny bit more expensive is that we need to put some fill in that. But we have fill adjacent to that site that we can borrow. So it's really not a significant cost.
And that 5% is only on the site work, right, that you're talking about?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're using the same exact building, the same exact, in that concept. It's really just like, what is the landscape? What does the site look like? Because we're basically going to be building a different layout building, but probably a similar size. And, the building's going to basically be the same on either one of these sites.
That was a good question. If I can ask a follow-up on that,
Go ahead.
is so 5% on this site. So what's this? I know it's a guess. What's the site work you think going to be?
So we are running that. It looks like it's about $1.6 million.
So you're looking at a difference of 50,000 one versus the other.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, that's all I want.
It was really small. I think it was like
Great.
75,000, but
Great.
yeah, and it's really just like some dirt moving. That's the
No,
difference
that's
there.
okay. I want to make sure I understood because I didn't, when you said 5%, I was thinking the whole thing.
Right,
So
yeah,
that
just
was a
the
little-
site work,
Yeah,
yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, and that includes both on and off-site work that we think is going to be required. Both of the sites, I think, have some what we would call off-site work that would be required for this development that would be reimbursable eventually to the town. Or it would, in one of these, it would be probably in fuel. So in fuel, I mentioned that we have to run some sewer. That should be rolled into the purchase price of the rest of the development because we're providing sewer for the rest of those parcels. So that just kind of factors into that part. On the Artisan District, we're going to have to build a little bit of 4th Avenue to get our good access to the building. Per the SIA, that's actually Landing's responsibility, but their timing for that requirement isn't until the Parkway. So at the time that they are responsible for building it, we would have them reimburse us for those costs. So, but they're pretty small in the general scheme of things. I mean, that sewer line was going to be like 60 or 70,000. The 4th Street is probably a little bit more than that, but it's not something that's going to be. It's not going to swing us one way or the other, really.
Okay. One other pro that I want to at least see if it is a pro, if we did decide to have the police building there in the Artisan District, would that give us a better case with the PUC on the safety with getting that railroad crossing through?
I think it would. I mean, we've definitely talked about the benefit of that, of, having the police station directly adjacent to that crossing. I mean, I think that's, it works in the short term with access through Main Street. But it's only going to strengthen our case.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So what we are hoping for today is to have a direction on one of these two sites. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And I can spend a couple of minutes talking about what our next steps are, what the dollar values associated with those next steps are, so we can we have a little bit of understanding about what the decision and those consequences are. If that's where you want to go, or.
So what did you ask? What was the question you just asked?
I'm hoping to get direction on one of these two sites for us to move forward on today.
Let me ask a question if I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question. We talked about, just so the rest of the council's aware of it. First, I want to thank Brian and Jeff Jensen and the folks, owners rep. It was an excellent meeting. I think we had very, very good discussions. One of the things that I talked about was the possibility of maybe putting a basement in this facility that contains the locker rooms and the exercise room and a records retention. Have we looked to see if the water table is different on Artisan versus down below? The site right to the east of the Bird, we can see right out of the back of this building, but the water table issue.
We have not. So that it's a perfect segue into what our next steps would be and how we would start evaluating and doing our due diligence on these properties. There's really three pieces of information that we want to gather about these before we go into design in earnest on that. And that's a geotech report where that's going to tell us kind of what our foundation design is going to need to look like and where the water table is. A phase 1 survey that's just going to let us know if there's any hazards on the site, and then a detailed actual site survey for topography and existing conditions for each one of those three things. We would also then move into a conceptual architectural layout so we could get the site dialed in, and then conceptual civil design so we can understand the costs of the site with that. You know, can we sheet flow that, or do we need a ton of storm drainage pipes because of the topography of the site? Our gut feeling is on fuel, we would probably not need a lot of storm. On Artisan, we may, depending on how that shapes out. So, you know, geotech, we're estimating at about $4,000. The phase 1 survey or phase 1 report would be between $2,500 and $3,500. The survey would be between probably $7,000 and $8,000. You know, so we're starting to rack up some significant costs as we go down the road for each one of these things. And then the architectural side of that and the civil conceptual is probably in the $25,000 range. And all of these would be per site. So I think that what I would say is we can approach this in several different ways. I know I asked for an answer and now I'm going to give you an answer.
I still had a couple of things I was going to mention. From what I heard the architects say, they can move ahead with their conceptual drawings and that as if on either side A or B, which is great because it's basically the same landmass. So we're not slowing down their effort is putting this thing together and start putting it. What I'd indicated from my position was if there was like a cost factor associated with A or B that was $250,000 to $1 million more, then I'd have heartburn not going with the lower side because I think they're both excellent sites. But what I'm hearing you say is they're basically the same. And I had indicated at that meeting that I would go with my gut feeling then, and hopefully everybody else would, kind of deal. And the third one is, just so you'll know, Aaron and I both agreed on these two sites. And I know that would probably give you a heartburn. So, thanks.
Is that a first?
No.
Okay, good.
First, but
Good.
close.
I'm glad it's not first.
May I ask a
Who's
question as
Lisa,
well?
Who's
please.
counting?
So can you remind me what, for the Artisan District one, what is that area zoned as right now?
I believe it is zoned as community commercial.
And then the one on Harmony is
Community
regular.
commercial.
That one's community commercial as well.
Yes.
Okay. And then another question is, when you say 30,000 square feet is what they're basing this on, is that 30,000 on one level? And do we know if that's the size that we want to go with? And would that have an impact on either of these pieces?
So 30,000 would be the total square footage. It could be on 2 levels or 1 level or a hybrid of, you know, maybe we have 20,000 one level, 10,000 a second level. All of them accommodate a 30,000 square foot building, single story.
Okay. Perfect.
Single story.
Okay.
Yeah. And
And
the
it
30,
could be phased.
Okay.
So first off, I'm excited that both of you guys agree with that. And I don't have a preference on sites, but I do think it's too early for us to decide, and here's why. I don't think we have all the info yet. I'd like you to do those 3 tests on both sites. You're talking only about $10,000 or $12,000. And I sort of agree with what Rick said. You know, if one site ends up that we got bentonite in this community tremendously. We've got water table issues. I think it's real important that we understand the water table issues, we understand the bentonite issues, and that we do those 3 tests, which is going to cost, we may be throwing away $15,000 if we had happened to choose the original, whatever the best site was first. But I'd rather see us get that and and again, if there's only a, like you said, a 50,000 difference in price on what it's going to take to site improve, I'll tell the council, I don't care which one we choose, quite frankly. But I do want to have us do our due diligence before we make any kind of decision, is my personal preference.
And the only, my only feedback on that is we're estimating that probably the longest lead item on that is the geotech, just because they're incredibly busy right now. And we're probably not going to get results back from them for 4 weeks if we push them a little bit. So,
But if, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But if what's going on is they can design the same design on both sites, and we're only, and so the fact that we decide in 4 weeks, so that's 4 weeks from now, our second to the next meeting, to me, that's not an issue.
Okay.
I'd rather know to find out that, okay, we could do a more economical deal having a basement in these, and all of a sudden find out we can't do it on whatever site we choose, is to me much more detrimental than waiting an extra week.
okay. I think we can turn the architects loose to do some rough work on these. One thing that came up after our work session when we were talking about it on Friday, and we were going through kind of what the process would need to be. The buildings do have a similar massing to them, but because the entrances are in different places, on Fuel, you can see that our main public entrance is going to be on the south side. On the Artisan District, our main public entrance is going to be on the north side. Some of that's going to change a little bit. So I'm going to just try to keep them in the range of doing things that they're going to be adaptable to both of those.
And my 2 bits is, even if we had to wait 4 weeks, even if we postpone this thing 4 weeks, I mean, this whole process has proved to us that we needed to do this whole process before, instead of trying to cram it into a 1.5 acre site, which never would have worked, as you guys are now telling us. And I think you guys have done great. I'm ecstatic with what Aaron and Rick have done on helping with it. And I love the fact that you spent so much time and energy trying to look at that and come out. I apologize. So I appreciate you spending all the time, but to me then, it almost highlights the point, geez. It almost highlights the point that that let's not hurry up a process, because we might find again that we would have made a different decision once we have it all. And as I said, I don't have a preference on either site. I just want the best site.
Yeah, and I agree. I think
The only thing I would add to that is, keep in mind, I think this is going to attract development around it. And if we want to spur development on the rest of the property down close to us or up on the Artisan Village, this is going to be a positive magnet, not a one that'll distract. And I think that's important for the people to know.
yeah, no, I agree with everything that you guys have said. And honestly, but I pushed the design team this morning to give me their recommendations, and it was almost 50-50 between them about which one they would pick. So
Does everyone here feel comfortable? Let's wait for 4 weeks, have a report on what the site development will look like and the cost of both. And if there's any problems you discover as you do the drilling and that kind of stuff.
Yep. We will endeavor to have that for the October 27th meeting, I think is what it's going to be.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, again, I think getting the right answer is much more important than getting a fast answer.
Yep. Okay.
Let me ask the mayor, is there any merit to going ahead and putting on the website, the discussion took place on this again, not just in the selection committee, but also in front of the working group, and the 2 sites that are being looked at and mention what they are and show. So if there's going to be a huge kickback by somebody, we just will get kicked right now is wait 4 weeks and pick a site and say, well, we should have asked.
Awesome,
I think we
comment.
put it out there saying, after looking at 13 sites or whatever, we're down to 2 and here's what they are.
You know, and does Old Town not want it there or something? I mean, I don't. So Kim, could you get with both Aaron and Rick after the meeting and Brian and sort of come up with a discussion point of what we discussed and the 2 sites that we're looking at, and I think it's a good point of, you know, if anybody has any feedback that they'd like to please send an email to.
Yeah, I wouldn't even ask for feedback at this point. I would just
Okay.
put out there that that where the status of the thing is they're waiting for additional testing on both sites to determine if there's any obstacles to either site. And here's the sites that they're looking at. And it's that way you don't stir the pot, but at least you put it out there and people can say,
Yeah, if people have something to say, I'm sure they'll
Yeah.
find a way to
yeah,
let us know.
yeah. They'll
So
find
is
out-
everybody
they'll find
good?
the number.
All good. Okay, Kim, do you hear that? Is that okay, Wes?
If it's okay with you, I'll work with Kim and get a draft and then we'll circulate it to you guys.
Perfect.
That's good.
Okay.
Simple. Keep
Yeah,
it-
just
keep
to
it
those,
simple.
just to those 2. Yeah. And Brian, Rick and Aaron, thanks for doing that. I know it's extra work and appreciate it.
You might mention the group. I think there's going to be a meeting, I think in October, around October 21st, dealing with trying to keep the cost down on this thing by bringing subcontractors in and discussing what is the highest quality, what is the lowest, and trying to figure out different pieces. And we were told, and I forget the gentleman's name, that this is the latest and greatest as far as keeping costs within reason,
Yeah, that was,
managing a project, and everybody seemed to love it.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that was Dave Eddy from F&P. And he, what they do is they break the project down into about 150 different line items. And they can do this based on like a 4-page set of drawings, one for the site, elevations, floor plan. And then we just go through, and the idea is that we get all the decision makers, everybody who's important in the room. That includes subcontractors who are going to be performing the work because they can give us feedback in real time about, well, you may not want to spend your money on that, but if you do this part, you get the benefit of this, but it costs way less. The designers will be in there. We've invited Rick and Aaron as much as they're available to join us. Obviously, Chief and Sergeant Wincoop will be there, Wes, myself, Jeff, to represent the project, the architects. And they have, again, I haven't seen it yet, but they have apparently built a room for this specific exercise. And they alluded to it when they were here and they talked about it a little bit, but they've patented this process as well. They've been doing it for, I think he said 10 years. And right now they're comfortable, like almost signing a guaranteed maximum price contract based on the number that comes out of that.
Cool.
session.
I think he said it comes in within 1%.
Within 1%, yeah.
Cool. That's great. Thanks for explaining that.
So I do think that probably will happen in early December now,
Okay.
because we'll have to have the architects do some actual site
Right.
work on it before we can, and then they have to have their subs price it for about 3 weeks. So we'll be.
Is there anything further that you'd like to ask the council? Okay, council, is there anything that anybody would like to ask?
No.
Okay. Thought, do we want to hit the other discussion item now, or would you like to take a break for 45 minutes?
I'd rather keep going because we have an exec session, but can we do that in the work?
Oh,
No.
we
Okay.
can't do it ahead of
No,
time?
not until you.
Okay. You're sort of Debbie Downer, aren't you?
We did publish.
That's okay. Oh, man, every time I turn around, it's snow. That may say something. Brian, you good? Good marching instructions? Okay. So the other discussion item we had was Kim doing a presentation on holiday lighting and what's going on with that. So would you guys like to entertain Kim now? Sure. Kim?
Are we able to do that if that was on?
It's on the agenda. We'd still have to agenda it again, but I think from budget purposes, you could probably talk. Discuss it, yeah.
Oh, you know what? She is going to need a decision on the holiday, aren't you, Kim?
Well, you have two decisions on it, whether or not to do it at all or to combine it, so there is a decision.
Okay. So, sorry, Kim, you're gonna have to come back. So, you know, if you want to trip Robert on the way out, that's okay.
No, he's right on.
Thanks, Robert, for keeping us in line. All right, so I don't think we can do anything more until 6 o'clock, right? Am I right, Robert? We love you, Robert. We just like to pick on you. All right, so with that, I adjourn the special meeting and we'll adjourn back at 6 o'clock. Kim, wait, let me ask one thing. This is your question, Lisa. Can we do the discussion item with Kim before the executive session so she could leave if she'd like?
Sure.
Okay. I know. That was Lisa's idea, so you owe Lisa.
When we go to amend the agenda right at the beginning, somebody can just make that motion as a part of the agenda.
Do we need to do anything with, then, since it was just a discussion, we didn't vote on anything, do we need to talk about the police building site or? Okay, so I can just go on, change the agenda for Kim and that's it. Okay. All right.
We did intentionally notice that police discussion on both the work session and the actual meeting because
Okay.
there was a chance we wouldn't get to it in the work session, so we wanted to make sure we were able to come back to it if time allowed. Yeah.
You know what? That's a good point. Since we went through that, is there anything more you want to talk about on the budget when we get to it? I mean, next time. In other words, we allocated some time to discuss the police station when we were going through when we were going to start and all that.
I don't think we actually we won't.
All right, so just a sec. Let me see how much
I don't think
time I
we'll be ready
put
to
in
discuss
for
it at
that.
all.
Oh,
Yeah.
so. You know what, though? Yeah, I was
And
going to say, okay, so
I
we'll
think-
just do that.
We'll easily usurp that time in the town-owned properties discussion.
Okay, so let's just leave it at 3. Rick, do you want to do that since you've sort of been involved in all this, you or Aaron? I'll let either one of you. Rick?
Yeah. I'll
Okay.
people look for the website.
Good. So when we get to discussion, I know Lisa has something and then you.
I'll keep it brief, about 45.
We appreciate that, Rick.
4.5 or 45? Ray, I want you to strike and I'll do it.
I'm ready to call to order and roll call for the Timnit Development Authority meeting.
Chairperson Mark Sukup,
Here.
Commissioner Rick Collins, Commissioner Aaron Pearson,
Here.
Commissioner Lisa Lake,
Here.
Commissioner Brett Hansen.
Here.
So we've got a check that was written and is given to us. I don't think there's any action that we're required to do here, right, Wes?
We do have the check register to be.
That needs to be, is that a consent agenda item?
It is.
Yeah.
We just need a motion and approval of the consent and you'll be
Could
good.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Approved. Is there any other items to bring up in this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
So, second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The Timnit Development Authority meeting has been adjourned. Melissa, would you call to order the Timnit Town Council meeting?
Mayor Mark Sukup,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rick Collins,
Present.
Councilmember Aaron Pearson,
Here.
Councilmember Lisa Lake,
Here.
Councilmember Brett Hansen.
Here.
Amendments to the agenda. We are going to, let's see, the police building site was discussed at the public meeting earlier, and so we will not be discussing that. If anybody's curious and missed that, we are going to have on our website a full details of what's going on there. And we are going to move up the discussion on the 2020 Holiday Lighting Festival above the executive meeting. So it'll go from 8B to 7E, and the executive session will be 7F. Okay. Do I need a motion on that? Is that just good enough? Okay, good. All right. Then public comment, just general public comment. Do we have any? Now, this wouldn't be for either the McBride or the Saratoga. This would be just public comment.
This is just public comment for non-agenda item.
Excuse me?
Just public comment for non-agenda items.
Correct. Do we have some?
I have one person signed up, but they didn't mark. Reed Miller, did you want to speak on anything? Okay, just checking. John Weiss.
And John, this is not for Saratoga Falls. It is for general. Okay, just making sure.
John, do you mind turning your mic on?
Hit the little face that's right there about from the right over.
Little, there you go. I
Okay.
usually talk loud enough, you don't need me anyway. All right, so 3 issues. The citizens of the Saratoga Falls, and maybe even the Kitchell Lakes, somewhat concerned with the traffic off Saratoga Falls Parkway at the intersection of Waterfall. It's currently a 2-way stop. There is concern that maybe it should be a 4-way stop. So my only comment is to the town to maybe have the city engineer or whomever take a fresh look at that intersection, make a determination as to whether or not it requires maybe an upgrade to what's currently present.
I just noticed the town engineer heard you and gave the thumbs up. He'll take a look at it.
Okay. Second point, I know it's on your webpage, but those of us out in that area, I'd like to see the town do more outreach on the road construction that's going on, either related to the school site and or the widening of Prospect or the prospect of widening County Road 5. I mean, I never got anything. I realize it's on your webpage. It also says call the city engineer for more information. I don't think you want them flooded with people, but I'd like to see some enhancement there. I didn't know that the prospect was going to be widened until I started seeing the signs. Not everybody knows to go to the town's webpage to read about what's happening in town. And since you have the money to put out postcards for the 4th of July celebration and the cleanup, it would probably behoove you to do some additional outreach, maybe sending a note out to the citizens that anytime you have issues, reminding them that a lot of this construction on public roadways is available on your webpage. It's not usually the first thing people think about. In addition to that, since we know Prospect is being widened, what's the extent of the widening, or are you going to continue to see widening on County Road 5? I think it would be really helpful if the town whether you know it now, but go out and find out. Give the citizens out there some idea of what the time frame is for all the various street improvements in that County Road 5 prospect development. I think it would save a lot of grief to a lot of people. So that's number 2. Number 3 pertains to the existing Saratoga Falls Kitchell Lake development, which is not on your agenda. And the concern is if you drive up Saratoga Fall Parkway, you'll see that the so-called Kitchell Lake development to the south, they're doing a lot of landscaping, a lot of improvements, and that's great. In fact, they laid an awful lot of sod today. If you look to the north of the Saratoga Falls Parkway, where the American Legend homes are now going to go, you'll find they did nothing. Fencing started, and then 30 days ago or so, they stopped building the fence. They installed some irrigation systems 30 days ago and stopped. There's a gigantic pile of crushed material in, I think it's Montero Lane. That's just sitting there on the side, but it's still in the city streets. And up to last Thursday, when they finally moved it, there was a gigantic empty metal reel sitting in the middle of the street. Now, I figured that the town attorney would probably not want to hear that because you have liability. It's a town street. People driving up, crashing into it, guess he's going to get sued. It has been moved, but there was another, these metal reels sitting in one of the ponds. So it raises the question to at least some of us up there, what oversight is the town giving to this development? We're like been forgotten. North of Saratoga Parkway, we've been forgotten. Everything on the south, they're going full steam. Last time I checked, it was all part of one development. I've asked city staff, I haven't gotten a response as to when, for instance, the landscape is going to get installed. We've been told a couple of dates, both of which have passed. So what's happening there? Are we being forgotten? What kind of oversight is the town providing to make sure that this developer performs all the tasks that the agreement calls for? And I'd like to know, for instance, when the landscaping on the perimeter is scheduled to be installed. The weeds are atrocious. If it was your yard, you'd be getting a letter from the town of Timnit saying your weeds are too tall. And I can't believe that the town allowed obstructions to be put in a town street. So the question really is, are you doing your job to oversee what's going on and keep the developer honest? Or you're just letting the developer do what they want to do at their own schedule? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other general public discussion? Okay, thank you. We've got consent agenda payables. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes. Consent agenda other. Previous town council minutes. And on this one, I wasn't in attendance, so I will be abstaining from the vote. So consent agenda, do I have a motion to approve it?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then I am absent or abstain. Okay. Mayor and council reports. I'm going to reiterate, I think, something that I said earlier. The staff and Lisa, finance manager, Christine, our consultant, and Wes, incredibly great job on the budget presentation, the preliminary budget presentation. To say I'm pleased would be an understatement. I think it's incredible. It has for real quick overview, but things like we're going to pay for the police station with no borrowings. We have no borrowings in sight. And I think it's a testament to some hard work and some great budgetary process by all the town staff, Wes, Lisa, and Christine in particular. So thank you very much. And thank you to the council for being so prepared and ready for it too. You guys did an incredible job. Lisa, you have a staff report you'd like.
Yeah, so I did write this up so that it should be in everyone's packet. But really just want to touch on the last two pieces was kind of next steps to take. This is related to creating a council code of conduct. And what I'd like to suggest is that we have a short work session or even during regular council meeting where we kind of at least give a starting point where staff can then develop some kind of a draft based on what we all discuss. So I'd like to suggest that we schedule that. I know we do have some budget work sessions coming up as well. So cognizant of that fact as well, but hopefully sometime by the beginning of the new year or so that we can kind of schedule something like that if all of you are all okay with that as well.
And Lisa, I think it's a great comment and I'm fully supportive of it. And in taking a look, if you don't mind, I'd like to schedule it January 27th.
Okay.
And the rest of the council, and I'd like to throw some things in there.
Sure.
We talked about term limits once before, and just because we've been so busy, we haven't talked about that. I'd like to talk whether we want to change the charter on term limits. I'd like to, I know during the last campaign, Robert, you mentioned that there were some deficiencies in our town charter as to how campaigns are run and codes of conduct and procedures that you thought we should consider adding. And I'd like to have that discussion during that too, if you don't mind throwing it all in there. And so I'd like not only to talk that, but I think it makes sense that those other things are also discussed, if you don't mind.
I would like to, if we do that, maybe have them be two separate things.
Oh, yeah.
Just because charters do have to, any
Different.
changes have to go through the voters.
Yeah,
For changes to
we gotta
charter.
wait till November on it.
But I think we could do a work session that perhaps includes both topics.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody? Is 27th okay with everybody? And so Wes and who else schedules that? Melissa? If you can make sure we have a special session on that and maybe get with Lisa and you sort of take a look at how long and in conjunction, because I don't know how long the charter amendments are going to take. You know, I mean, I know term limits is one of them, but there's some other couple things that when the campaign was going on that Robert mentioned. And so I'd like to, so maybe talk to him how much time he needs, and then you'll know how much time you need, and then schedule it with Melissa. Does that sound okay, Lisa? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Good comment, Lisa. I think that's excellent. Finance report has great info in there. Engineering report has great info. Community development report, great info. Police staff report, great info. And manager report, great info. Does anybody in that group wish to highlight or make any comments? Okay. Great. Good
Mayor.
reports in there. I'm sorry. Oh, Matt, you did.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'd like to just note that I did put on your chairs tonight a little synopsis of what applications are and yeah, exactly which decision-making body is on that. And I'd be happy to take anybody up on a 101 kind of session and walk through those. So open that invitation to the council.
Awesome. Great. Okay, so that moves us to business item 7A. And I'm excited a lot today. First, the budget, and then this IGA presentation. This has been something I understand from staff has been worked on for 9 years. And we are now potentially having a intergovernment agreement with Larimer County and ourselves. And I can't be more excited about it. So This is resolution number 59, series 2020. And Matt, I'm going to let you take it over. Now, we've seen some of this stuff. So again, hit us with the high points and any new things that you think we should know.
Sure thing. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, my pleasure tonight to finally bring forward this IGA. I did have a discussion topic a few sessions ago with the council, and I presented a draft version of that IGA. There's in this packet, there's a slight change, there's some slight changes to it. I've highlighted those in the staff report, so I won't go through each of those, but I just want you to know this has been a significant collaborative effort between Larimer County, all the town staff. It's a long time coming, as you said, Mayor. Actually, I just looked it up tonight again, just to refresh my memory, but 2006 is when there was a settlement between Larimer County and the town of Timnit over some annexations and things like that. And it set out a course that said by the December 31st of 2006, there would be an IGA completed with the town in Larimer County. And that agreement did say, well, if it doesn't come to fruition, it's not a breach of the agreement, but as long as the parties work on it over time. So we've been working on it since then. So it's been a long time coming. But we are there at the finish line now. The Board of County Commissioners has seen this multiple times. The Larimer County Planning Commission has seen it. There's been some good input right near the finish line, and we've made some minor adjustments to it. But it does bring us great collaboration with the county, gets us to a place where development applications that happen out in the county that are eligible for annexation become referred to the town, and we have opportunities to engage with those and kind of see the destiny of the town as envisioned in the comp plan come to fruition. So with that, I will take questions and hopefully answer those if you have any.
Matt, my understanding is that Larimer County was going to bring this on their agenda yesterday.
They had a little work session yesterday, and they did have a little presentation. Didn't hear much from the commissioners at that meeting. There were a couple small comments after the meeting that came up, and we've actually incorporated one of those into the version that you're going to see tonight. And then they're going to be actually acting on this on the 29th. I believe I put that in the packet. Yeah, so next week will be when they will be acting on this formally. And so then it'll be adopted by both bodies at that point and enforceable at that point.
Anybody with questions for Matt? I think you did a great job of giving us, and I love the red line. Good job on that. That made it very much easier for me to understand and stuff. So thanks, Matt.
Mayor, just real quick, I want to draw your attention to the letter that's in there from Wellington. So,
yes, please.
So just for your reference, there's a letter of support in there from Wellington. So that's always been an issue that's outstanding. So through the council's leadership and change of perspective on this, they've embraced our GMA moving to County Road 52. So that letter of support is actually in this IGA, and it will be forwarded to the county commissioners as well. So
thanks,
thank you
Wes,
for your help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So I need a motion here.
I move to approve the resolution approving an IGA with Larimer County.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 7B, Resolution 6D-220, a resolution approving Saratoga Falls amended sketch plan. I need to make a comment. I'm going to be recusing myself from discussion and the vote on this. I do not have a real conflict of interest. I could have a perceived one. And the reason why is my 401k plan, which is in a trust. The trustee of that purchased an interest in a Metro District bond that is in Saratoga Falls. It's not a developer bond. It's not substantial at all to my net worth. Nonetheless, to avoid any appearance of a conflict and a perception of any bias, I am going to recuse myself. Okay, so Mayor Pro Tem Collins, will you take over, and I'm going to excuse myself.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the council, this is a good opportunity. The council would like to welcome you back and welcome you gone now. What we're going to do this evening on the Saratoga Falls is we'll go ahead and hear a staff report, and then the developer will speak. And then those of you that have signed up will have an opportunity to speak. We'd ask you to hold your comments to 3 minutes. You can repeat what somebody else had said. I'm not a stickler on that. And then we'll also give an indication of who wrote in. We have several emails and notes that was sent into the council, and sort of give you a flavor if those were pro or con, and then have a discussion with the council on that. So let's proceed with the staff then giving an overview of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Let me get this going here. All right, perfect. There we go. So yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The item in front of you tonight is a sketch plan amendment proposal for the Saratoga Falls subdivision, highlighted there on the blue, on the northwest corner of Threeville Parkway, County Road 3, and Prospect Road, right there northwest of Dead Man Lake. The property is zoned R2 single family residential, kind of highlighted there, the section that we are referring to. The sketch plan in front of you is for a total of 250 lots. For this portion, which is known as the third filing. The previous sketch plan, which was approved in 2014, had a total of 250 lots for this filing as well. And for the second and third filing, there was a total of 500 lots, which this is meeting. The main change for this proposed amendment is to include a roughly 16-acre school site for an elementary school for the Poudre School District. That is the main change with this. There are some layout changes as well from the 2014 plan, but they are keeping the same with the number of lots, the amenities, from that standpoint, and they are meeting the open space requirement. The gross density for this area will also remain at 1.41 dwelling units per acre, as which was proposed and approved in the 2014 plan. There was a required neighborhood meeting for this sketch plan amendment that was held on July 16th via Zoom. With existing residents of Saratoga Falls and Kitchell Lake. That purpose of the meeting was to gain feedback with any concerns on the plan from residents, and approximately 30 residents attended that meeting, and their concerns are noted in the observation report in your packet. And then there was also a meeting, the meeting was also recorded, and that is also made viewable on the town's website. You as a council on August 11th approved the waiver of the waiting period for a denied application to be brought forward. So that is why you are seeing this here before the 1-year period. Planning Commission had a meeting on this on September 1st, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the sketch plan by unanimous vote, 5-0 vote. The owner is Saratoga Falls LLC, represented tonight by Lee Lowry and Jim Righeimer. The applicant is TB Group, represented by Kristen Turner. Staff has reviewed this against the review criteria out of the land use code and has found that it is in substantial compliance with that review criteria. With that, I will turn it over to Kristen for her presentation.
Hello. Can you guys hear me? Do I have the mic set up okay? All right.
It is, and you can take your mask off.
Okay, well, you let me know if you can't hear me, and I'd be happy to do it then. So, all right, well, we will jump into this. So Saratoga Falls, that is the name of our sketch plan, but as you know, the property is developing as Kitchell Lake, so this is just an example of the sign that we have out there. If you want to go ahead and forward to the next slide. Oh, is there? Aha, great. Thank you. And I believe that everybody's familiar with the site, but just quickly to give you an idea of where we are, the site does surround about half to 3/4 of Kitchell Lake. You have county land to the east, to the south, and then first and second filings are to the west. And this is the sketch plan. So as you can see, it is a bubble plan, and we'll talk about this a little bit more with the next slide. But this gives you the big idea of where we're looking for residential development, a school site, and open space areas, as well as the general idea for how circulation on the site would work. So the plan that we've brought you is in conformance with the approved 2014 plan. You'll see that first filing has 83 lots, which is built. Second filing was approved for 250 lots, and third filing we're proposing 250 lots, just as the approved 2014 plan calls for a total of 583 total for the site. You can see the densities for each of the filings as well, and note that the third filing density is the lowest for the entire site. So when we get to the next plan, you'll see the lots, the 250 lots, and quite a bit of open space as well. Here is the approved 2014 sketch. And then this is the proposed concept. So as most of you are aware, the biggest thing that's changed since the approved sketch is that now the proposed sketch is a bubble plan and the concept is a supporting document to show you how we think that site will develop. So this is what we think the site will look like when it develops. And the sketch plan that you saw previously on the other side is based off of this layout. So just a couple of things to note as you look at this. It looks very similar to the approved sketch. You're going to see 250 lots, quite a bit of open space. There are several pocket parks which are scattered about the site. You'll see that the wetlands open space area through the center is still located there. And you'll also see the addition of a potential school site down along Prospect. All right, and here's just a good way to compare the two. So on the left, you have the 2014 approved sketch, and on the right, you have the proposed concept. So 250 lots, just like the approved sketch. The only difference that we're proposing here is a potential school site for an elementary school. All right. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about really quickly is open space and how that works on the sketch versus the original proposed or the original approved sketch plan. So since we have a bubble plan now, you don't see all of the open spaces that we have. So as Kevin said, we have, I think, 23% around there on the sketch plan. So that's the bubble plan. Those are the green areas that are specifically called out just for open space on the plan. But if you look at the concept on the right-hand side, you'll see that there's considerably more open space. So if you were to look at tract C, and we don't have a pointer still, right? Can you circle around that? Awesome. So that yellow bubble right there, it's a big bubble. And then if you look to the right, that same bubble, we went and did the calculations on this. And so that's about a 35-acre residential bubble that's shown. But on the concept plan, you'll notice there's about 8 to 9 acres of open space within that bubble. So I just wanted to point out that while our sketch says we have about 23% open space, which does meet all of the land use code recommendations, the actual plan is probably about double that when you get into looking at green belts and the trail corridor and big open space areas, as well as the pocket parks. You'll notice on this plan that all of the lots back to green belts as well. So there are no backyards that we'll be touching. And then we have a really robust trail system here. So the blue line that runs from north to south is the Prost Trail. And so that will be a major connection for the town that will connect several systems. This portion of town is really kind of lacking in trail system right now. So it's going to be a really great benefit to get that in and start this process of building the trail system in this portion of town. You'll see the red trails are the concrete trails and the purple trails are soft surface trails that are shown. So we're showing about 7, did I count right? Yes, 7 access points over to the second filing, which will ultimately connect to first filing as well. So lots of good pedestrian and bicycle connectivity here. ways to get through the site without having to be in your car at all. And this is going to be an overall subdivision amenity as well. So you can see all the trails just for third filing. We're looking at about 4.2 miles of trails just in this third filing. That's in addition to all the trails that are in second filing and again up in first filing. This is just a little zoom of the area around the south end of the lake. It shows 2 of our pocket parks. We are proposing a clubhouse and a pool. Again, this is just a conceptual drawing, so it's not exactly what it'll look like, but we wanted to show you that we're looking at the clubhouse, the pool, and the dock so that there's access to the lake for all of the residents as well. And then just quickly, a couple of sketches to give you an idea of what we're thinking when we get into design for this. There'll be multiple pocket parks that are scattered about the site, and they will all have a different feel to them. Some of them will have active play equipment. Some of them will be a little bit more passive and reflective. There'll be ball fields, a place for you to take your kids, throw a frisbee, run your dogs around. We are committing to a clubhouse and a pool for this community as well. There'll be different trails for people so that you can experience different feel when you're out there. So if you're looking for a concrete trail and you need to get the stroller pushed, or if you want to go for a run and you're looking for something that feels a little bit more set back, we'll have those soft surface trails worked into this plan as well. We are proposing that dock so folks have access to the lake. It is a beautiful amenity that as of right now, nobody actually has access to. So we're really looking forward to being able to provide that opportunity for folks in this neighborhood to have access to the water. There'll be enhanced planting areas. There'll be trails so that folks can access it, but we also make it a little bit more robust. So we'll land back on the sketch plan here. And I'm just going to finish on this one because I feel like this is the slide that everybody's going to want to talk about, that you can compare the two. So as you'll see, we have the original sketch, the proposed sketch, both very similar. The only change that we're really proposing here is that we are adding that school site. And in regards to the school site, I guess I just wanted to kind of preemptively provide some information that I anticipate there being a few questions on. So the school site is not guaranteed right now, but we have been actively discussing it with the school district. It's as close as a commitment as you can get. They won't at this point purchase the land until they have finalized plans, but we do continue to work with them, and the sketch plan helps provide a level of guarantee for them that that site is available if they choose to move forward with it. I know in the past there's been concern about having a school site here as well. We are really excited about the possibility of a school site here. We think it is a great addition to a community. Kids can walk to school, kids can bike to school, they don't have to be bused. And the school district does a lot of work to determine where these sites should be so that they're not busing kids all over town. And this is a site that they've looked at and said that they may need to put a building here. When you look at that site, it's about 16 acres right now. Generally, about 60% of the site stays soft surface and about 40% of the site is what's actually developed. So while it looks like a big bubble right now, not all of that becomes hardscape. So just a couple of things to keep in the back of your mind as you look at that school site in the center of the site and evaluate it. So I'm going to leave it at that. We do have our team here. We have our developers here. We've got our engineers here, everybody to hopefully answer any questions that come up. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have or see where it goes from there.
Any questions from the council?
I'll wait until.
Brad, anything?
I just have a quick question about,
Sure.
You had said, I believe it was something about 1.4 dwelling units per acre.
Mhm.
Is that including the acres designated for the school?
The way the units per acre is calculated is based off of the total acreage for the site and the number of lots. So yes.
Okay, thank you. Do you
Yes.
know what that number would change to if you took out the portion that would potentially be the school?
I do not, because that is not how the land use code
Okay.
designates it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, Kevin?
And I just want to add one more thing off of that with the school district site. Note 7 on the sketch plan actually dictates that if the school district does not go ahead with the purchase of that property, that it would revert back to open space. So that has already been dictated with the plan, and that would fall with the approval of that. So if, the school district for some reason decides not to buy the property, if the developer wished to make a change to that area, they would have to come back for another sketch plan amendment, just because that note on there does dictate that it would automatically revert back to open space if there was no school.
I'll go and jump in with a question at this point. So the plan last December, the school lot was about 12 to 14 acres is what it stated, and now it's 16.3. Is there any, can you elaborate on that difference a little bit?
Sure. It's really just that we've worked to a higher degree of detail with the school district and what they're looking for. So what they typically do is they ask for a little bit larger site. Very often they don't quite need it all, but they like to make sure that they've reserved enough space to be able to design their building appropriately for the site. So once you get into detailed design with the school, if they determine that they don't need that land, like Kevin mentioned, it just, if they decide, well, we actually only need 12 acres of it, it reverts back to that open space, but it reserves the opportunity for them so that we can't come in and develop something and then they're short their space.
Okay, so the school district originally thought 12 to 14 acres might be enough, so there's a good chance that this could drop down to something more like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not uncommon, and it's kind of a range that we're typically given, that depending on what school district you're talking to and what area it is, what size they think the school might be, it can range anywhere from like 12 to 16 that they might ask for. And so in this case, they're just asking for the high end to be shown on a sketch plan, and then the actual size of that lot would be determined in the future.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me ask you, the way I'm looking at this thing, you went back to the number that was agreed to 4 or 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
In order to accommodate the school site, you had to move, it looks like about 30 units or 30 housing sites in a different configuration to make the site big enough for the school area. Is that correct?
Well, no, not necessarily, because we're looking at the plan and just sort of revisiting, the layout that makes the most sense.
Yeah, let me show you what I'm talking.
Sure.
This is the proposal.
Mm-hmm.
This is the old proposal. All these were displaced because this is not to scale.
No, they're to scale. So there's a slightly different alignment. We have more information on how the road network will work coming off of Prospect than we did in 2014. So as it was mentioned, these are conceptual plans to look at and not necessarily what the final product would look like once you get into engineering and the constraints that you have. So for example, in that 2014 plan, it also shows a road running through the wetlands. That was a specific item that we tried to move it so that it was not running through there, and just starting to get some of the geometries of how road networks would actually work with the site. So there were things shifted around, but in general, the number of lots are generally in the same vicinity.
Same vicinity, but it's moved out a little, it looks like. Let me ask you, there's been letters sent in, and one of them talked about the ditch that's going to be covered. Is that just a final decision, or is that a sketch plan? On the sketch plan, it's covered.
The ditch that will be piped is a final decision, and we do have folks from our team that can.
And where's that
can speak
located
to
at
that.
on this sketch plan?
Anybody want to talk a little bit more? It's going to run near where that post line is for the trail.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions from the council?
Not right this second.
Not right now. Okay. Thank you. If you'd stay around and after the public
bet.
comment. The public will speak after the developer, and then we might ask her back up, or she might want to come back up and address some of the questions that were raised by the public.
Sure.
If that's all right with you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa, who do we have to speak this evening?
Okay, so the public hearing is opening at 6:40 with Carol Folkrod.
Thank you for coming, Carol. If you'd state your name again so everybody can hear, and then,
Carol Folkrod,
and your address.
1520 South County Road 3. I live east of the proposed development, and I've lived there for 39 years. The first meeting I came to about the Saratoga development was 15 years ago, and I've been coming to meetings since then, as many as I can. So I saw on one of the sketch sites that there are 9 proposed housing units going in south of the new Prospect Road. And I'm worried that that would like negatively affect wildlife on that lake right next to it. Also, it would definitely harm my view that I have right now. That's it.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next, we have Don Simpson.
Good evening. My name's Don Simpson, 901 Skipping Stone Court, Saratoga Falls. My wife and I started building our house in 2014. Really liked the look of the area. We liked the vision for the town of Timnit. We liked the blend of open space and housing, and started building. Well, as soon as we met some of the neighbors, they said, hey, meeting's going on. They want to increase the density south of us by quite a bit. So there was a lot of meetings. We don't need to go into the details, but the bottom line was the density was increased, but practicing diplomatic relations as the council did, they found the middle and said, we're going to balance the open space with the development. And I think the folks that were concerned about development were okay. I think the town council reached a good decision for everybody. 2 years ago, phase 2 starts. It's called Kitchell Lake now. If you go out, you can take a look at what that looks like because it's being built to the 2014 decision. It looks good. It's a nice balance of homes and open space. They're still working on it, but I think, if anybody wants to look, it kind of shows you what that look and feel was to be. Then all of a sudden, here we are, phase 3. This is, I think, the second meeting in 9 months on this, and we, had several meetings in the past. So we looked at the development here. You can kind of see the two, and so the first thing that really concerned us is, we're losing the balance of open space. If you look at the sketch maps from 14 to now, it's cut in half. If you look at the area along the lake that's available on the left side versus what's available on the right side, development's been pushed up right against the lake. There's 2 pocket parks on the lake. The 1 pocket park will be totally buildings and pools and parking lots. So our concern is we've lost that open space for recreation and wildlife along that 100 or 200 foot stretch along the lake. Having a school out here is a wonderful thing. We've lived pretty much everywhere in the past has had a school. It's a wonderful asset to have in a subdivision. So no concern with the school. The concern is the ledger that was approved in the Balancing Act in 2014 had a certain amount of open space and a certain amount of building. 16.3 acres of that open space just went away to accommodate the schoolhouse. So again, that's back to that balance being kind of tipped against the favor of open space and into full development. So my recommendation to the council is that you reject this proposal tonight. Ask the developer if they would like to come back and make some modifications, that they consider 3 things. One is restore that open space along the lake. That was a huge piece of the discussion back in 2014. Number 2, compensate for that 16.3 acres out of the development side of the ledger, not out of the open space side of the ledger. And number 3, if you look, there's a heavy preponderance of open space on the south. And if you look off to the east, those houses, if there's open space behind them, it's not any wider than from me to Wesley. So it's been, move that stuff up and, let the residents of phase 3 enjoy the open space that we enjoy in phase 1. The new residents that are moving into phase 2 now, I think, are enjoying that same style of living. So I guess our outcome as well, I guess we're not new residents anymore, been here 6 years, but get that balance restored and honor that commitment that the residents and the town council entered into in 2014. Thank you.
William Grush.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and council members. I have to reiterate Don's comment regarding the density and the number of houses that should be removed because of the school. And that number is exactly 22. It's 9% of the area that's been basically taken out of development. So 9% of the 250 gets 22. With regard to the tract or parcel G at, down there beside Dead Man Lake, I would very much like to see that parcel removed and no building there. What I would like to see is widen the shoulder of the prospect on that side of the road enough to put down gravel so there's a place for a few people to park, put in some benches, then put in a fence with no trespassing signs and call it a wildlife viewing area. Would be a great asset for the entire county. So specific request there. With regard to having all the houses pushed up against the lake, Don mentioned along the lake itself, but even just south of the lake, we've got that large open area there to the south and west of the southwest of the school site, and more open area on the other side of the ditch in phase 2. And I think especially now that the constraint of that ditch is no longer an issue, they should look at possibility of perhaps moving that southern part of the ditch and the Post Trail to be closer to the houses on phase 2 there, and include that area and all the space basically from what they're calling their parcel C all the way down to Prospect, and spread those houses out, put in more little pocket parks, make pocket parks bigger. Their houses are, the green space between some of those backyards is almost infinitesimal. And there's no need to do that. The land is there. They can do much better than what they've shown us here. And so my recommendation to council is to get some specific requirements to the developer and particularly some real numbers on what the setbacks should be from the reservoir on that north part of the reservoir where there's large lots or against the north boundary. The pelicans really like that end of the reservoir, and to push those lot lines back to say 300 feet from the water would probably enhance that resource for them. And for the rest of the reservoir, I'd like to see 200 feet minimum between the shoreline and the houses. And one other thing, every time we see a plan, the park for the clubhouse and pool area seems to shrink. And I'm sensing that having that on the reservoirs may be problematic. And also it's going to be a high traffic area. So just adding to the, compounding the problem of traffic at that corner of the lake. Better perhaps to put the clubhouse and pool down beside, across the street from the school where, eventually there would be parking available for people that were, during the summer when school's out, people who wanted to drive to the pool would have some parking available to them there and would reduce the congestion on the upper end of the, in the center area there. We still need some facility there to access to the lake, some, a restroom and maybe a little outdoor shower and some way to tie up kayaks. But having the pool up there doesn't make any sense to me at all. So I recommend that you deny this request for this proposal and send them back to the drawing board. Move the ditch.
You need to wrap it up now.
Move the ditch. Move the post trail maybe on top of the ditch, but open up that area so they can use that open space more efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa.
Donna Grush.
Hi, I'm Donna Grush, 1120 Terrace View Street, and I'll give you your time back. I fully support Don Simpson and Bill Grush's comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason, not going to try your last name. Okay.
Sorry, it's a German name. Can you hear me okay? Hi, I'm Jason Apke. I am a relatively new resident of the Kitchell Lake. The second filing, I'm, I think, one of the homes that's on the edge of the open space we're talking about to the south and west of the elementary center. And myself and my girlfriend are both very much in favor of this new proposal. Today, we are thinking about starting a family in the near future, and we love the idea of having an elementary school we can walk to. We like the ideas that have been put forward for paths and things like that. I am a fat man, and I need places to go and walk. COVID has not helped me out at all. So I would very much appreciate the additional recreation, and in addition to, I like the ideas of the proposed clubhouse and pool. I think that's all I really have to say. Not as detailed, I suppose, but thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Jamie Weber.
Good evening. I'm Jamie Weber. I live on Bristow Road in the second filing of Kitchell. And I just wanted to be here tonight to give my full support for the elementary school and community development, including a pool, trails, and new homes. When we moved into this community, we were so excited for the people, the trails, the lake access, and these improvements and additions fit in perfectly to the needs of our neighborhood. And I just wanted to say I'm really excited as a mother of two, potentially these children going to this elementary school. I'm just excited that they would be able to walk to school, the safety, the proximity, and just we're really in favor of this school. So thank you.
Thank you.
If you can give me just one moment. I don't know who else signed in.
She's going to check and see if anybody else signed in. And I think we've got a couple others.
Okay. Oh, okay. So you wanted for this one? Okay. Okay. All right. Well then. I will call up Mr. Miller, Reed Miller.
Reed Miller, 1481 Larimer Ridge Parkway. I live right across the street from Jason, and he worked real hard putting in his sod and all that. So I'm out there working. And my wife and I, Hannah, also looking forward to starting a family, and for all the reasons that the previous two people in support of the filing would love to have access to the lake and paddleboard and whatnot out there. Right now, it's not accessible at all. And yeah, would love to buy potentially a bigger house, but we're in all that we can afford for now. So thank you.
We appreciate you coming out this evening, you and your wife.
All right. Allison Albers.
I'm Allison Albers at 6423 East County Road. We are part of the community that's in the county, but very close to all of this is what's going to be happening. And we have made our home there. It's a very tranquil and quiet and wonderful atmosphere. My big concern is the lake. The fact that we were here months ago, the council very wisely determined that the original plans from 2014 were good and everybody had agreed. And the last time we were here, there was discussion about with the new plan included the homes south of Prospect, right on Dead Man's Lake. as we all locally refer to that. But we see now that that is back. And the concern is that months ago, there was no environmental impact study done. I called the Larimer County. They knew nothing about it. Nobody had asked them. And that the lake and the reeds and the grasses around the lake are home to many different, much wildlife, many different birds. There's nesting eagles that have been in the trees in front of Carol's home, and also osprey. You've heard, I'm sure, about the osprey, and just many different herons and all of that. And it's, I think it's important that environment's been allowed to grow and develop and thrive. And if there are homes that are going to be right adjacent to the lake, south of the road, that is going to impact that environment. So I would like to encourage you to please hold off before making a final decision, and let's find out exactly what that impact is going to be. And also, I just want to make a note that we were not notified of this new proposal. And we're just, like feet. You can count it in feet from the lake. And so I feel like we have a relatively small community out there. We're the newest people practically. I think we've been there 15 years. So we'd appreciate if somebody, Kevin, where's Kevin? Oh, you're Kevin. Okay, if you could please put us on the list. I've seen the correspondence you've had with some of our neighbors, and I feel like you haven't really been able to address some of the questions and concerns they've brought up. But they're letting us know, but I would like to be put on the list so that we can be part of the community and feel like we can, contribute. So, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Peter Champion.
I'm Peter Champion. I live at 5580 Homeward in the second filing at Ketchel Lake. I was just saying, we were excited when we moved in the open space. I have a 14-year-old daughter that's really looking forward to eventually having access to the lake, which she can't at the moment. I'm also excited about a possibility of an elementary school. I have one that's due in December. So we're just really excited. We love the open space and everything. We think the neighborhood's great. We came from Loveland where there's nothing like this. And so I'm just hoping that we can build it, because what I'm really afraid of is we keep shutting it down and we end up with something a lot more dense. When this is a great option, the school will be nice, the open space, the trails, the pool, the whole thing. The neighborhood has a really good feel. Everyone's really friendly. Just looking forward to more of it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
There were a few others that signed in but didn't state an agenda item. Were any of you wanting? Okay. Al Lucas.
I'm Al Lucas and I live at 1095 Hawkshead in Saratoga Falls. I won't go through a lot of the stuff. I thought Don did an excellent job indicating what we had agreed to initially. One thing we did agree to as well in writing is that we would always have full access to the water rights and around that lake. That was put together when they split Saratoga Falls apart. We ended up with one and they ended up with the other. And that stuff's been predetermined and legally filed between the two. So one of the questions I thought we could answer while the lady was up here, I apologize, I've forgotten her name, I've met her several times, is that what is the distance there? Are we looking at the same thing it was before? That was one of the major issues we had, was around that lake and protecting the lake with enough easement there where you could go enjoy it, fish, whatever you want to do. That was part of the agreement that was made when we split the pawl. And I bought in 2015. I read through everything. I went and checked everything, and it was validated that those agreements were made. That's why I bought there for a retirement home. And I moved in 2016, and last year, 9 months ago, this came back up again. We went through the same hearing, and now we're back here again, not even a year apart. And I thought we had it pretty well picked out about the lake, but then I see this new drawing and the lake has shrank. And this looks to me, they're going to put private stuff around it. They're going to make it more of a private deal, and you'll have a little walkway you can walk past. That'll be about all you get for lake access. That's my major concerns. And like I said, Don and those guys were there. We have one other issue that's there, and that's traffic. And I've never seen a traffic plan anywhere. And I've asked for it the last time, 9 months ago. And I was assured by the city that they would look at that and let the people in Saratoga Falls know what's happening. We see markers up along our road right now, along our subdivision. I back up to County Road 5, so obviously I'm very concerned what goes right behind my house. And I see there that there's all kinds of markers where you're ready to start work. I'd start moving out, and we were told it was going to be on a progression lane coming in and out of Saratoga Falls. We have no concept, no idea what that might look like. We know that there's going to be a school. It's going to have 1,800 plus kids in it. And we know that there's going to be a grade school, and yet we don't see traffic of anything that's been dedicated to anybody. What's going to happen? We know that there's been some third lanes and turn lanes that we were told about. We've never seen a traffic plan of what's going to happen and how the traffic's going to flow in and out of that whole school system. And that school system is the biggest part of this whole issue here. Now, the people that go there obviously would go to that school, which makes it nice. And we don't regret that or begrudge that or anything. Even though we're going to be paying an extra $500 a year for the school, that comes out of our taxes, out of our homes. They've already gave us the number. So that's always a concern when you find that and then you have no idea what they're doing and they're just doing anything they want to do. And you guys are putting streets in and not telling us a word. I think that's not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
I guess I will see. Kathy Simpson, did you want to speak? Okay.
Hi, I'm Kathy Simpson, 901 Skipping Stone in Saratoga Falls. And I just want to reiterate what everyone has said about the open space and what a wonderful neighborhood it is. And I think that everybody who's been up here, whether they think the plan should be approved tonight or wait, has said that they love the neighborhood, they love the open space. And it's not about whether or not you support the school. It's should the school come out of open space or should it come out of development? It seems like the developer will be paid by the school district for the property, so they should be able to afford to back off of the number of homes. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Travis Redmond, did you want to speak? Okay. Pete? Okay. What's the last name? Okay.
Hi, my name is Pete Bowley. I'm in 916 Skipping Stone, Saratoga Falls. And I just agree with everyone here really on almost everything. You know, everybody's in agreement with the school. Everybody's in agreement with the school and everybody's in agreement with the open space. Everybody's in agreement with access to the lake. I think what we're saying from Saratoga Falls is look at the way you've pushed up the homes. As you noticed it earlier yourself, Rick, they have just pushed the homes up. And if you look at the homes at the top of the lake, there's a 26% increase in the number of homes from the approved plan now to what they're asking for in this sketch plan. 26% increase. So that seems crazy. And Lisa, you were asking about the sort of dwellings per acre, and I can't for the life of me figure out I was 1.5. So I'd really like to see how they've calculated that number, because I can't get anywhere near it. So my ask, like the rest of the people from Saratoga Falls, is to ask the developer to revisit this number of 250 homes and make it more realistic based on the school site, which if they've sold it already, then as been mentioned, no need to take that in additional homes. That's it, thanks.
Thank you, Pete.
That's all.
Does anybody else want to speak before? I think is staff going to give us, we had a number of emails and correspondence, letters sent in, a list of any of those.
Sure thing, Mayor Pro Tem. So we have received roughly 14 emails today. We had Kristen Lang and Joey Davis who were in favor of it. We got one from Carol Folkrod against it, who you also heard from tonight. We also got one from Erica Baltayan. I probably butchered that as well. She is in favor of the sketch plan as well. Colin Van Tilburg also emailed in his support. Chelsea Parsons emailed in her support as well. Rebecca Saigri, I butchered that as well. She also sent in her support. Clark Richardson also sent in his support. Edward Salters sent in support. Jared Harrison sent in support. Josh Green submitted in support. Josh Zorn submitted his support. Travis Redmond submitted his support. Brad and Ashley Myers sent in support, and then a Kristen Snyder also had submitted their support. Their direct comments were given to you for your review as well.
Yeah,
yours was
they were in
included
our
in the packet.
packet earlier.
The
I just
ones
wanted
that
to
I
make
read
sure
off
the
were
ones
given
that
to us
came in
today.
late got put into the record a little bit there, and we'll submit those. Would the developer like to address any of these issues at this point?
Thank you. Can you hear me? All right, perfect. Well, we appreciate everybody's comments, both the comments against the project, because it gives us an opportunity to hopefully clear up some of the questions they may have. And of course, the comments in support of the project as well. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was there were a few comments about losing open space and looking at the school site as a loss of that 16.3 acres of open space. And just to reiterate, you know, the way that area will develop, the bulk of that area will remain as a soft surface. So playgrounds, fields, not parking lots and buildings. About 40% of that 16 acres would typically develop on any school site. This is typical for an elementary school site as a hard surface, parking lots, kiss and go lanes, the actual school facility, and about 60% of that site ends up being those soft surface play areas and playgrounds. Another really important thing to note when you look at school sites is that they are open to the public. With the exception of the few hours that our kiddos are in school, the gates are closed for their safety, and then they are opened before school and after school, as well as on weekends. So I know my family and my kids, we visit the school near our house all the time and utilize their fields and their playgrounds. So it is an additional amenity to everybody that lives in this neighborhood to have that extra equipment and that extra space to be able to play. So hopefully when we look at that school site, we can look at it as a little bit less of 16 acres that disappears. Final size of the school site to be determined. Definitely a need for a school in this area, and then opportunity and amenity that comes along with it, with all of the, not only the school and the fact that our kids will be able to walk and ride their bikes and not have to be on buses, and it's fewer cars that are moving through this general portion of town, but also that they have these amenities within walking distance as well. The other thing that I heard come up was the density and how this density can be accurate. And what I'd like to say to this is, you know, this site allows for, it is zoned for a much, much higher density than is actually developed and proposed. And this 1.4 units to the acre is actually like one of the lowest densities you'll see in a subdivision that has this zone district or an equivalent zone district. If you were to look in Windsor or Fort Collins, kind of in this whole northern Colorado area. So this type of density is really more consistent with something like an estate zoning. And when you look at the plan, you see how much green there is. It's, you know, we say 23% that's calculated on the sketch plan and close to double that when you get to the concept plan. So if you're looking at about 40% of the site that is open space, it's really considerable compared to any other subdivision you want to choose in this general area to compare it to. And what I would say is that, yes, the school area is not deducted from the total acreage to calculate the density per acre. It is calculated based on the way the land use code specifies that we should do it. And it is calculated in a way that is consistent with every other community in Timnit that has a school site there and how their density was calculated. So we are being consistent with all other school properties in subdivisions in the town of Timnit and the way the density is determined. So hopefully that helps to clarify that a little bit. I did hear some comments about traffic. There was a traffic report that was submitted with our proposal. It did include the school site and the impacts that that school site would have on this development. It has been reviewed by staff. It has been reviewed by the town's engineer. Any comments that we received, we incorporated and we made changes to the plans to accommodate those comments. And then it's important to note that, as you guys know, this is a sketch plan level. So if we were to get approval and move forward with a preliminary plat, when we were to bring that preliminary plat back, we would come with a new and updated traffic study that would be specific to the exact engineering that we're showing. So it would be at that higher level of detail than it is even now. But there has been a traffic report submitted with the school site that has been reviewed by the town's engineer. And all of those documents are public record, and I'm sure Kevin can help anyone who would like access to those. So there were some questions that came up about the lot south of Prospect, and this has been a comment that has come up a couple of times. And so what I can say is that originally we looked at proposing a community park south of Prospect. And as we started to dig into this process, the more conversations that we had with staff, the more we looked at this, the feedback that we received was that there's a lot of safety issues with having a park south of Prospect. There are major safety concerns with getting people across the street safely in that location. There are concerns that that park would not be well utilized. And when you don't have eyes on a park, they become a less safe space to be in. So, you know, when we design parks, there's all sorts of rules in the code where it requests roads on all sides of it. And, you know, there's reasons for all of these type of things. They want good access, they want easy access. And they want eyes because it helps with the safety aspect of that. If you think that all of these lots, you know, 583 lots would be north of Prospect and having to cross a major arterial, it makes more sense for us to place those pocket parks and neighborhood parks north of Prospect so people can stay as walkers and bikers. They don't have to get in cars and they don't have to worry about being able to safely cross that street. So this was something that we worked through with staff, and we looked at the opportunity for moving a few of those lots. So some of those lots that were in that area that the school bubble is now shown were moved south of Prospect. So there were concerns about, is everything being squished to one side? Well, we took 13 lots and we moved them south of Prospect. They're some of the biggest lots that we're showing on this plan. We are showing buffering to Dead Man's Lake, and every submittal that we make is also sent out to Colorado Wildlife. Am I saying that correctly? Did I get the right? Colorado Parks and Wildlife to review and to comment on. So they have seen this application. And as we move forward, if we're able to move forward with this plan as is at preliminary plat, we would be submitting all the next higher level of documentation that's required to show if there are any additional impacts. And then those impacts, you know, per those reports would be required to be incorporated into the plan. So, in terms of providing some comfort with it, this is something we've worked through with staff in terms of a better use for that area south of Prospect, but also knowing that just because there's lots shown there right now doesn't mean if a plan tells us later we need a little bit more of a buffer, then we build in a little bit more of a buffer. Let me run through my list to make sure I'm getting everyone. There were some comments about the location of the clubhouse and the pool, and that it would be better to move it down closer to the school or to Prospect. We would actually respectfully disagree with that. It is centrally located right between second and third filing. So it's really nice access for the entire community to be able to get there easily and quickly. The farther south you move it and the farther east you move it, the more it becomes an amenity kind of more for just that filing, because the longer you have to travel, it just reduces the likelihood of folks going to utilize that amenity. We really wanted to have some sort of community building with the dock up near the lake, because that is part of the amenity package for the subdivision, that we're getting people access to the lake and out on the water. You know, that way we have our building there so that there's restrooms available. There's a place to lock up your paddle board so you don't have to carry it back and forth with you. You have a place where you can change. And when we look at these are not going to be giant parking lots. So if you think of, you know, pools in your subdivisions throughout the community, you know, they have a handful of parking lots to give folks that need to get in a car a place to park, but they're not intended to be a big 50-car lot to take up a bunch of space. So this will be designed to be a nice soft area where we're looking to get people to enjoy and feel like they're in a park-like atmosphere, but also have that access to the lake. There were some comments about the green belts and that they were tiny. And so just a couple things I want to point out comparing the two plans. The smallest lots proposed in third filing are exactly the same size as the smallest lots that are in second filing that are currently built. The largest lots that are proposed in third filing are equal to or larger than lots in both first and second filing. So this site has the same range and variation in lot sizes. They've just been shifted around into a slightly different configuration, but there are no lots that are smaller. And I had a point that I was going to make here and I just lost it. So let me just look at, oh, green belts, that's where I was going. That's the other piece of it. So second filing has green belts, all of the lots back to green belts, and third filing does exactly the same, and all of the green belts are exactly the same size. There is no reduction in the size of the green belts between second and third filing. So you will see consistency across the board in the subdivision. We're not trying to shrink anything. We're just trying to add this amenity for the community. And this is for the community as a whole. It's not just for the Saratoga and the Kitchell residents. Having an elementary school here is a benefit for the entire community. And we weren't able to have PSD here with us tonight. They were here for Planning Commission. But they, you know, to speak a little bit for them, they do a lot of work to figure out and track where kids are, where families are, how your town is growing, where it makes the most sense to put these school sites. And the message that the school district gave us at our last meeting was, this is our last site and we need a school here. You know, it's starting to get to the point where they're going to need to bus kids too far to get to the elementary schools. So we really hope that we can provide that amenity in this community, but it really will be a benefit for the entire community because that does reduce the buses on the road and parents driving and traffic in general when you can have your schools situated closer to where your kids live. I think that I've hit.
Yeah, if you will
These
just stay
comments?
hang close before we open
You
up
bet.
the questions for the council. I'd ask Kevin, do you have anything to add after listening to this discussion?
Nothing at this time. Just ready to answer any questions you may have.
Mayor Pro Tem, I have a couple questions I'd like to ask. Regarding the school, do they have any idea of when this would even be built or what size that it would be?
It would be an elementary school. And so they have sort of standards for their elementary school. Is it typically 600?
It's roughly 600, yeah.
Okay.
So I figured probably same size as Bethke, or I know Tim's a little smaller with their constraints, but
Most likely.
yeah, most of the schools are right around 600.
Yeah,
max.
absolutely. And we haven't been provided with any type of a timeline. I don't know if you can add any more to that.
No, one of the last things that the school district had mentioned to us on this is it's more of a securing a school site for the future.
Sure.
They would most likely have to come back for a future bond like they did a couple years ago for this. It's just to secure the school site location. It's similar to what they have at the southeast corner of Main and Busgrove. They've had that property for a middle school since roughly 1998, I think it is.
Okay.
So it's just to basically secure the potential for the future of it. They would most likely need to come back for a bond for it.
Thank you. Do you know what those minimum green belts are? Is it 30? Is that the minimum? I think that's what town code calls for, correct?
Yes.
Is the minimum, and I imagine some are larger than that.
Some of them are larger,
As we move
yes.
along. I was on the council in 2014. I was the only one here, I guess, that's left that was on in 2014. I fully remember the battle that went through there. And, for us back there, if I could sort of sum up what most people were thinking, it wasn't so much the balance between the open space and the homes as it is the density and then what also comes along with that. So I feel like this is in line with what we did in 14. We're voting here on the bubble diagram. We're not voting on where these houses are. This has to come back through us again and then again after that. So we're voting on the bubbles, and the bubbles show where we're at here. And some of these other tweaks, because I would like to see a little more space between the lake and those homes up on the north. But that isn't that's not discussed today. We're not approving that today. We're approving the bubbles. And the bubbles are what you see on the plan before this. So I think thanks. Whoever did that. Thank you.
No problem.
That's what we're voting on today, not the houses. That's a sketch, not the final picture. So I think that's all the questions I have at the moment.
I know it's in the sketch diagram at this point still, but do we have an idea on the distances between the houses in Kitchell Lake and the houses in Dead Man Lake? Do you have any idea what you're looking at there?
Yeah, so I mean, at a conceptual level, we have a pretty big range. That range is between like 50 and 180 feet. So it's a variable. And once we get into actual lotting, we'll have more specific numbers. But there's nothing that's smaller than even the green belt width, which is located, which is per the code. So it's pretty significant. As you can tell from the plans, it gets a little bit tighter near the very tip of it, but it opens up as you move towards the clubhouse and pool area and just continues to get larger.
Okay. So town code doesn't specify any kind of setbacks from lakes. For example, up in Wild Wing, we don't have any, we have houses right up to the lake. But that is something that I think is desirable for this subdivision. So I guess my question is if we were to make a condition of an average setback from the lakes, is that something that you would find generally agreeable? I mean, I'm not talking a number, but just, if I were, the wetland setback on average is 50 feet. If we were to say as an average setback, just so we have something concrete and settle down to start with, because I know in the past there's been thoughts that there was, but there really wasn't.
Sure.
Our line.
Well, what I would say in response to that is we are showing a buffer.
Okay.
We do intend to put a trail around there. So we don't want the lots backing right up to the lake either. We need some space and we want a trail. Beyond that, we do have our development team here, and they're the ones that get to make any commitments rather than me to averages and agreeing to numbers. But what I think is that our plan is already depicting that. So in good faith, if a preliminary plat were to follow, it would need to depict something similar to at least what's on the concept plan, which is showing a buffer between the lake.
But you don't expect anything less than 50 feet in terms of that buffer. You don't. You might have 49 or something, but I'm not going to hold you to a hard number right with this question. But you don't expect a minimum less than 50 feet.
I can't give you an exact number until we get into the plotting.
Okay. I heard an I can back there. Okay, sure. Well.
Yeah, why don't you come up to the mic and give your name and.
Thank you, Jim Righeimer, CEO of Arbor Capital, and we're the developers for the project. We weren't here when you were here in 2014, and we there's a lot of emotion in this project, obviously, over the years and stuff. And so we did the first section, and it's all sold out to builders. There's about 110 houses pretty close moved into. I don't know one person of the 110 that doesn't want the school, doesn't want the lake and all that. But the reality of what the whole project is, and it gets to all the different numbers, is that if you look at the bottom dimension, that's 1 mile from one side to the other. Normally in an area that's 1 mile from one side to the other, you're putting in like 1,100 homes. We have 500 homes in which we have to replace all the infrastructure around it. If you were there this last week, Prospect is no longer there. That has been totally dug up. We're putting in, Don, tell me what's 14 inches of base and 6 inches of asphalt. Both sides, the developer who did the first filing went bankrupt. They never finished the road. We're doing the whole road, finishing that up. We have multi-million dollars in cost to divide up amongst 500 houses. So it does matter how far we are from the lake. But to make it very clear, if you say average 50 feet, that's not a problem at all. That's not a problem at all to do that. We do want to set back. We do want it to be, there's nobody's going to have a private lakefront at all. We do want everybody to use that. It has a concrete path all the way around it. And so we're going to be fine with that. But when people come up and say, move it back 200 feet, we have to somehow figure the math to make it work. And quite frankly, those lake lots are the only thing that's going to get us to the point to be able to pay for this. I mean, right now, you know, I'm not complaining, but the first project was a science experiment. It wasn't a good business model. This next side, we have to make it work. And we've got massive amounts. Moving Dead Man's Road is a whole new road we're building. Again, divided up by 250 houses. But if you said average 50 feet, that's not a problem. One of the problems, again, with this 1 mile sketch is the pencil is 30 feet thick, right. You know, and so you don't really get to see it. And so people look like it's on top of it. But in the end, we want everybody happy. I think if everybody had to be honest about it, looking at what we've done right there, if you've driven out there, I mean, the open space that we have in the lakes, they're rolling out the sod this last week, all the different parks. It's pretty amazing community. And I think that's why we have so much support from the people that moved in. I have never done a development where I had so many happy homeowners. And part of it was because it's so low in density. We're lower than everybody. And as I said at the Planning Commission meeting, we don't want to be treated special, but we just want to be treated normal. We have the lowest density of any project in the whole town for the density, the zoning that we have. We have more open space, except maybe the golf course, which you can't just walk across, than any other community in the town. So I think we're really there, and we're really excited about doing it. And as like you said, this is the bubble plan. We'll get you the other stuff. But if you say 50 feet is average, that's not a problem. Because I think the smallest we're at one corner is like 35. After that, it's 60, 70, 80 feet, you know, back from the lake. So thank you. Any question?
Thank you. Kevin, do you have anything else before we continue with questions?
Not on that, no.
Okay.
I have more of a comment. I think, Aaron, you made a good point of what we're actually looking at today, which is not necessarily specific lots and sizing and where it all backs up to and all of that. So I think that's just a good reminder of what we're really looking at today. I also do think, though, that for the future, I would like the idea of some kind of a minimum setback or something, or when we look at the areas around the lake, since that is a comment that we heard from a lot of people, is wanting to have good access to that area. So I think that's something that would be important to maybe look at down the road. But since that's not what we're looking at today, as far as the school site goes, you all heard today that we've heard pros and cons, people for it, in support of it, people opposed to it. I disagree that the school could be considered open space. Even, you know, when my kids right now are school age, when they were younger, the times I would have been wanting to go to parks and playgrounds is during school hours. So I would not have been able to use that. So I disagree a little bit about that point. But it is nice to have that extra area for weekends and things like that, and know that it's soft surface. And who knows how many years down the road that will take place anyway. So I think just looking at what we're actually voting on today and keeping in mind these comments for future steps when we're actually looking at more detail to it.
And if I can just respond to that really quickly, and I just wanted to make it perfectly clear as well, that our open space calculations do not include the school site.
Yes.
So.
Yes, yes. It was more the comment when you said it could kind of be since 60% of it is soft surface.
Yep, nope, that makes perfect sense. I just wanted to make sure there was clarity that we were not counting it
Yep.
towards open space. Thank you.
And Lisa, that sounded like a comment. Let me ask Brett and Aaron if they want to make a comment before we entertain a motion.
I'll add a few comments. So I did spend some time reviewing council minutes from 2014 and from last December. I wasn't on the council last December, but I actually did attend that meeting live. I also watched the neighborhood meeting that was a month or two ago. And here's kind of the main points that I saw discussed. There was concerns about how the density is calculated, how the school site fits in, and how open space is used in the plan. That's kind of the main categories I saw in the comments. This plan, if we follow the land use codes, it is the same units and same density. It's 250 units, 177 acres, a density of 1.41. But even if we were to say that the school didn't count, if we remove that calculation, it's 1.55, which is consistent with the other filings of 1.52 and 1.59. It's less than the second filing still. And as a note, the plan that was rejected last December was about 1.87, which was also similar to a plan that was rejected before the 2014 plan. Those are the kind of densities that the council was rejecting, was 20% more dense than either the 2014 plan or the plan we're considering today. And as far as how the school site should be considered, I mean, I'll disagree a little bit with Lisa. I don't think the school should be counted against the number of lots, and here's why. If this open site were to have parks, pavilions, an amphitheater, if you were to put the clubhouse down there or have a second clubhouse for some reason, I don't think there would be a strong push to say that the developer need to cut lots. And for me, it's a similar concept. And no, it's not available 24/7, but it's open space and it's parks that are paid for by school district dollars instead of your town and your metro district dollars. And yes, the school district dollars I recognize come out of our pockets too, but that's going to be true no matter where they put a school. And as far as the usefulness of the open space, I mean, I see trade-offs. I do think, can we go back to the comparison there? There is some reduction of space near the lake, but I also do want to point out something here. If you look at the lake shape between the 2014 and the proposed sketch, we'll say the 2014 sketch was very generous with what the shoreline actually is. For example, on the east side of the lake, in the 2014 sketch, it goes straight south, whereas on the proposed sketch, it curves significantly out to the east. In that southeast corner, it sticks out quite a bit in the proposed sketch, whereas the approved sketch brings that in quite a bit. You really have to look at that very subtle black line that goes around the fully colored section of the property in 2014. So if I'm trying to compare the open space that was approved in 2014 versus what is today, the difference isn't nearly as dramatic as these pictures make it look. And I've looked online on Google Maps and seen what the lake shape actually was. And in the proposed sketch, it seems to be a much more accurate depiction of the lake. So I understand the frustration that it feels like in 2014, that plan was less than, we'll say a little deceptive, even I'll just be blunt, a little deceptive in terms of what the lake shape was and the amount of shoreline that was there. But even with that said, yes, and you look in that southeast corner, there definitely is a reduction of open space near the lake, but I think that's the main significant difference. It's not the entire lake. It's much less dramatic around the lake. So if we're looking at how the open space is used, there's an additional pocket park in the Northeast. To me, it appears that there's more green space amongst the houses. If I were to look at green space or open space on this plan, it's 40 acres compared to 32 acres for the exterior open space that was in the previous plan. So it's actually more space that's designated as open space in the bubble diagram. And I think a lot of the way they were able to achieve some of that open space is because they reduced the amount of cul-de-sac layouts, which is a relatively inefficient use of space. By my account, the previous plan had 9 cul-de-sac loops and this one has 2. But it does lay out the streets in a way where it does limit the traffic that would go in front of your house as well. So you get a bit of a balancing act there. So for me, when I'm looking at how I'm voting on this, I do have to look at the land use code first. I have to look at the comprehensive plan first as well. And then I looked at if I think it harmonizes with the 2014 plan. And no, it's not the same. There is some loss of green space in some areas, but I think there's gains in other areas. And it seems like even by those opposed to the plan, it's pretty universal approval of the school district getting a site there. So in my opinion, I believe this does harmonize with the previous plan. So those are my comments.
I think it's as close to the 14 plan. I love the idea of a school being in there. I haven't really heard anybody say they don't like the school being there. I mean, it's great for your property values as a real estate professional. I know that plumb well. So I think that's great. Yeah, that's really all I have to say.
No, I don't think we're right now, the council's discussing. I'm sorry. I'd like to make a comment. First, for the residents that have lived there for a number of years, I would be as protective as you are. You know, we all are so fortunate to live in Timnit and to live in Saratoga Falls. It's a beautiful community. The new residents that came forward and the ones that wrote in emails saying that they favored this plan, I think sometimes we get so caught up in the process, and it's a lot like making sausage. It's pretty messy, that we forget actually what the ultimate goal is. And the ultimate goal is to try to come to a compromise that'll suit both the folks there, the folks coming in, and the developer who makes it happen out there. I've looked at this thing. It's a bubble plan. Back in December when we had this before the committee, it was voted down because they had tried to increase the number of units. And at that point, I said, if you can bring it back and live within the agreement that was reached 4 or 5 years ago, I think that you've got a good place to go. How fortunate are we to have a school now say that they're willing to go into that site, it looks like. That adds value to that community. And even with the older residents, not in age, but in terms of being in the neighborhood, they're gaining a valuable resource there. And I know more than Al and some of the other, Pete and some, John, to see the kids in the neighborhood and the youth that's going there, if we don't have those neighborhoods start to dry up as well. So I think it's a good compromise. It's a thing. I trust the developer in terms of his people are here tonight. And I think they're going to listen to the comments that have been made and try to wrinkle out some of those things and make them a little clearer as we go down the road. We don't have all the answers. It just doesn't happen. We rely on good staff. We rely on a planning commission that does a terrific job, and the town manager and attorney. So what we do is we just try to do the best we can. And that's why tonight I'm going to support this and hope that we can keep after it. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved. I don't have the wording in front of me.
A motion approved, yeah. Approves resolution 60.
I make motion to approve resolution 60 series 2020, a resolution approving the Saratoga Falls amended sketch plan.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Thank you. And thank you for coming out.
We'll start in about, you guys need time?
Yeah, take a break.
All right, let's take a 5-minute break. So next topic before the council is ordinance number 12, series 2020, public hearing on an ordinance approving an annexation of the property known as McBride to the town of Timnit, located east of County Road 3F, north of Stonefly. Staff.
Thank you, Mayor.
Let me add one.
No, they're really different. They're significantly different.
So they are, but we do recommend opening the both public hearings at the
Yes.
same time. And then we'll step through an A part and then a B part.
Okay, so just a sec. So I'm going to go with Kevin, then go with the developer, and then public hearing for both.
Yes.
And then come
Yes.
back to the developer, and
Yes, sir.
then we'll vote on 7C.
And then
7D is all we're going to do is a vote, or do a
vote. That's it at that time.
Okay, great. All right, Ken.
Yep, correct, Mayor. And along those lines, I will actually present both at the same time since they are the same property.
Yes.
And it's basically a combined process with the annexation and zoning. So once again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an annexation of one parcel known as the McBride property. It's roughly 4.8 acres. It is located north of Stonefly Drive and directly east and adjacent to County Road 3F, highlighted there in blue on the exhibit. This is just the annexation plat showing what that annexation would be for the entire 4.8 acres. At this time, it is just the annexation to bring it into the town limits from Larimer County. Good timing with our Larimer County IGA from that standpoint. The proposal intent of this proposal is to continue the Timnit Trail apartments from phase 1 to phase 2. That process will actually come through at a future date with a site plan. So nothing in regards to the site plan is being decided on tonight. This is just solely for the property to be annexed into the town. So you will receive that site plan information at a future date. But they are planning on extending extending the apartments from phase 1 into phase 2 with this proposal. The zoning they are proposing with this is R4 multifamily residential. It is in compliance with our comprehensive plan. This is just a rough indication of what that zoning would look like there in the Riverbend subdivision. We're right where the TR is for tree, where we're sitting right now. So it would be commercial zoning surrounding the R4 and then the RMU residential mixed use to the south. Planning Commission held a public hearing on both the annexation and zoning on September 1st, and they recommended approval of the annexation and zoning by a 5-0 vote. Staff has reviewed the annexation and the zoning to the comprehensive plan and Colorado revised statutes and the land use code, and find it in conformance. With that, the owner is Timnit Trail 2 LLC, represented tonight by Isaac Lewis. And if you want to say a couple words. You got to turn your mic on. There you go.
All right, thanks, Kevin and council. My name is Isaac Lewis. I represent the property owners and the owners for Timnit Trail Riverbend Apartments. Like Kevin said, it's just for annexation, but our intent is to expand into that property with more apartments, 82 more units, 3 more buildings, very similar to what we have there. Some covered parking, open parking, and amenity spaces. But if there's any questions about the annexation process or anything else that you have for me, I'm here for you.
Thanks.
One thing I do want to add with this process, we will also be looking at vacating County Road 3F, that existing county road. Right now, it actually, the right-of-way ends at the north side of this property. Let me get back to this. So at this portion here where the Prudhoe River Trail crosses, the right of way actually no longer exists at that point, and it just becomes a public access easement to that house office that's to the north there. So with this, we are also going to be looking at vacating County Road 3F for just removing that as a road, through road essentially. So County Road 3F would end at Stonefly Drive. That action actually has to be taken by you as council members, which we will be bringing forth in the coming weeks as well, for that action to remove County Road 3F and vacate it.
I just have one quick question on that. But we'd still be able to go south though on 3F.
Correct.
This can't go north anymore.
Yeah, from south of Stonefly, 3F will remain as is. It's just to the north, since County Road 3F to the north of Stonefly primarily served this property and then one other. With this property being annexed and then to be developed, there was only one property left that the right of way served. So with that, it just made sense, instead of having it as a public right of way, to have basically a private access from Stonefly North.
Okay. Oh, so it'll just be private access for that one remaining
Correct.
parcel to the north.
Correct.
So they'll still be able to use it.
Yep,
Okay.
they will still be able to use it. It'll just be a public or private access drive. But just the fact that it'll be public will go away.
Public comment now?
Mayor, we need a public hearing for both.
Okay, so I'll
12 and
open
13.
the public hearing. Melissa, do we have anybody signed up? I will close. Do I need a vote to close? Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. So this is a vote for ordinance 12, series 2020, the annexation. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 7D, ordinance 13, number 13, series 2020. This is to approve a zoning map. Open it up for public hearing, or opening the public hearing. Melissa, do we have anybody signed up for public hearing? I will close the public hearing comment. I do have questions before we vote on this. The first one is, my understanding is this will come before us again for the final plan of this. So all we're doing is approving an R4.
Correct.
We're not approving any kind of sketch plan or anything else like
No,
that.
this is solely just with the zoning, per state statutes. When we annex a property, we need to give it a zoning designation within the town. The comp plan designation for this supports an R4 zoning. So that's all this is doing, is bringing in, that property within town zoning. And yes, when the site plan does come forward at a future date, it will come before both planning commission and council for approval.
Okay, and I'll make this comment to you and to the developer. I would hope that site plan has extra parking, whereas the current one does not have enough parking. And what I would hope is that we abandon, that we make a no parking all along Stonefly, as opposed to letting people park along the side. It's a dangerous road. And the fact that we're allowing people to park there, to me, is creating a hazard.
Yeah, one of the catalysts for doing this project, even just to begin with, was to improve the parking situation there.
Yes.
So we've added a significant amount, and I can't speak specifically yet because we're still proposing, and we'll finalize that on the site plan review. But we're going to meet and slightly exceed the town's requirements, which were addressed maybe 3 years ago, so or reduced 2 or 3 years ago. So we're going to go back to exceeding that.
Yeah, and I hope it's more than slightly exceed, quite frankly, because I've seen what's there and there's a problem. And I would hope that we have a lot more parking there.
Absolutely.
Because I think what's been created is a dangerous situation on Stonefly that quite frankly, I don't feel comfortable with. And
I know I've seen and heard lots of comments of people that are unhappy with that road as well. So
Yeah. I'm sorry.
that's okay. Yeah, I know Lisa and we had discussions with town staff a little bit, and then they got rid of some of the median lines, and I think that's helped. But yeah, you get some of these double wide trucks, and it's a windy road, and and yeah, it'd just be best if we can vacate parking on that street. So
Well, and I think if we look at the bigger picture, once the other areas are developed, there will probably be a lot less cars even wanting to go on that road. Because right now I think people avoid the trains, and that's a lot of times why they go around, but there will be other closer ways for residents to cut through the neighborhood without having to go around that way.
and maybe we look at restoring the parking then if it becomes a really low traffic thing. But
so I think you both hear that we are encouraging, in order to get a smooth flow through and approval of your plan, that the parking is viewed, and I doubt that slightly in excess of the current plan requirements will accomplish our request.
Well, I'd like to speak to that if I may. When we went for that phase one, there was a variance to reduce what was required. And so we're going to have a significant improvement to that. And so if we hadn't had that variance, we may not see that issue right now. We're going to erase that and get back to where it should have been at the beginning.
That sounds great.
Yep, we're working with them to at least eliminate the deficit that was caused by phase one.
And that's, I think we're saying the same thing.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, thanks. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, so my understanding is we're just approving an R4 zoning and going forward with that. So do I have a motion to approve ordinance 13 series 2020?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Carries. That takes us through the business section.
Kim.
I know. That takes us through the business section. And now we are at the discussion section. So Kim, everybody's been hitting me with, why isn't Kim getting a chance to talk?
Yes, I appreciate this, council, so much. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council. As you know, I'm here today to talk about our holiday lighting festival and talk to you about some alternatives around what we could possibly do instead of having our traditional event. I feel like a broken record. We know my spiel. Unfortunately, we can't gather in the ways that we have in the past, but we're always looking for new ideas to figure out how to celebrate in different ways. So tonight I'm here to ask you your preference. I outlined two options in your materials to simply cancel the event. Or we can look at reallocating some of that budget to create a holiday light tour at the community park. And I understand there's also some other ideas what we could do with that budget allocation to still provide something of an experience for our residents, while perhaps not the same thing we've done in the past. So lay it on me.
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, in light of canceling it, I'd like us to look at another option as far as when we had a retreat, we went out to the youth camp out here. And at that time, the director of the camp had indicated to us that he was going to have a light show for Christmas holiday to help fundraise for that facility and for his program. I would like us to contact him and see if they're still going to do that. And if they're going to do that, see if there's a role that Timnit could play in helping them get that accomplished as a sponsor or co-sponsor, one of the sponsors. Mm-hmm. And if they're not, then the fallback position would be to cancel.
Okay.
In our intent, I assume, Rick, in having her approach them, our intent isn't that we share in any of the contribution proceeds, but to help fund it and have them encourage Timnit residents to come and see it.
Correct. The location's ideal for us. The cause is a great cause out there, and it would fit hand in glove. And yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. I'm happy to reach out to them and report back to the group to let you know what I learn and what I find out. And just to make sure that everyone's in agreement with Mayor Pro Tem, it's either we partner and make that happen through a sponsorship. And if that isn't available to us, we just cancel the event and enjoy the ambiance that Don and his crew will be putting up on the bridge and the buildings and downtown. Yeah, it's part of your job title, ambiance creator.
Lisa?
Ambiance director.
I like Rick's idea of looking into that.
I do too. I fully support Councilman Collins on this.
There is a God.
That's twice in one meeting.
2020 is a crazy year. Dave.
Am I alive?
Christmas miracle already.
There's fairy dust floating up here.
Like we've been here all day or something.
Thank you, Kim,
That's all I
and
need.
thanks for
Thank
your
you.
patience all
Thank you for
day. I
bumping me up.
appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
All right. I think what I do now is close for executive session. Robert, do you want to say why we're going to executive session?
Sure. Quick announcement. The public is advised that the council may convene an executive session under CRS 24-6-402 for the purposes enumerated therein. A 2/3 vote of the council is required, and the specific purpose of the session must be stated for the record. No official action can be taken during the session, and items requiring official action will be considered in an open meeting following the session. So we are looking for a motion to enter into executive session to discuss the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of real, personal, or other property interest by the town pursuant to 24-6-4024A. So
okay, sorry, let me just add to that. So all we're doing is talking about potential negotiations with certain landholders or our properties, correct?
That's right.
Okay, all right.
Pardon me. The time is now 9:35 and we conclude the session. If any person who participated believes that discussion included matters not within the proper scope of the session, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record. Let the record show that no concerns were stated. Nope, I got it on my.
Let's see, do I need to do anything saying we're now in session?
Nope, we're in.
So, do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second. Aye.
Those opposed? Lots of seconds. Yeah.